Chapter 998. Tang Yichen's intention was to emphasize her identity. She was the second miss of the Tang family. The hospital chief was a little surprised. He had never seen Tang Yichen put on airs in the hospital before. Yet, this time, she clearly stated that she was the second miss of the Tang family. Okay, since it's your family that needs you, I won't say much. But, the doors of the military hospital will always be open for you. Thank you, hospital chief. After speaking, Tang Yichen turned and left. Behind her, the hospital chief's daughter was still unconvinced. What's so great about her? When it comes to social status, she's not even as high as you. She may not be that great, but the Tang family is not a family that you can afford to offend. Now that Tang Yichen has left, you can focus on chasing after your man. What an embarrassment. Tang Yichen no longer cared about what the father and daughter were saying behind her back, nor did she plan to bid farewell to the hospital staff. However, when she admitted that she was the second miss of the Tang family, the hospital staff that knew her well were shocked and secretly delighted. Does the hospital chief's daughter really think that she can do whatever she wants? Don't forget, our Yichen also comes from a wealthy family. That's right. All she knows is to use a chicken feather as a token of authority. Now that Yichen has revealed her identity as the second miss of the Tang family, she's giving them a show of strength. All hail Yichen. Everyone in the hospital was secretly clapping for Tang Yichen. The hospital chief's daughter was so blind that she dared to bully anyone. Especially when Tongning was still staying at the hospital. She must be tired of living. But, Tang Yichen had no time to think about this. The handover of work was going to take some time, but she had to deal with Tongning first. So, she decided to exchange her annual leave for 5 to 6 days. That was more than enough. Afterwards, she arranged for Tongning to check into her teacher's hospital room. Although the conditions couldn't be compared to a big hospital, it was warm and comfortable. It didn't take long before Tongning saw the teacher that Tang Yichen had mentioned. This simple and amiable middle-aged woman gave her a good impression and made a good first impression. Since you're here, you should wait patiently for the baby to come. Yichen has already explained your situation to me. I will do my best. Thank you, Dr. Lin. There's no need to be so polite. Yichen is like my own daughter. After saying a few words, Dr. Lin left the room. As for Tongning's transfer, Mo Ting was already informed by the time he arrived at work. Of course, he stood on his wife's side. After all, he had done some research on Dr. Lin and found she had a good reputation. The teacher said that in order to reduce the risk of the surgery, she still needs to talk to a few other doctors and come up with a plan for you before the surgery. So you might have to wait for a few more days. Are you sure you're not going to return to the military hospital? Tongning suddenly asked. Are you willing to go back? There's nothing to be reluctant about, Tang Yichen replied firmly. There are some things that I can't control. As long as you don't regret it. As Tongning had moved into a new hospital, Mo Ting had to put in a lot of effort into maintaining security and confidentiality. But, this did not affect his trust in Dr. Lin. Although the new hospital wasn't a top 3A grade hospital, it placed a lot of emphasis on humanistic services. This was something that Mo Ting was very satisfied with. Meanwhile, Lu Guangli only found out that Tang Yichen had left the hospital that night. He thought she was simply taking Tongning to her teacher for treatment. But, just as he finished the last surgery and stepped off the operating table, he instructed his assistant, notify everyone of the group meeting tomorrow as soon as possible. His assistant nodded his head. But after thinking for a moment he asked, in that case, should we not notify Dr. Tang? Why? Because the hospital chief said that she has already resigned, his assistant replied. Lu Guangli froze for a moment. He felt like he had been struck by lightning. He never expected that Tang Yichen would leave the hospital and leave his sight without saying a word. They had been friends for so many years. Even if they were brothers, shouldn't she at least say hello? After work, Lu Guangli took a detour to the new hospital. As soon as he saw Tang Yichen volunteering at the hospital, he immediately approached her and pulled her aside. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? I've been on leave for the past few days. I still need to return to the hospital to hand over my duties, Tang Yichen replied. So, I didn't think there was any need to tell you. Plus, I don't think I need to ask for your approval before making any decisions. Are you really angry? Hearing Lu Guangli's question, Tang Yichen took a deep breath and nodded her head probably. What do you think? You're not coming back? Tangy Chen shook her head. Tongning is right. No matter how bad I am still the second miss of the Tang family. There's no need for me to belittle myself. After speaking, Tangy Chen was a little surprised. She then said to Lu Guangli, take care from now on. Okay. Ha. Tangy Chen didn't quite understand what Lu Guangli meant. Take care. After saying these 3 words, Lu Guangli turned around and left. He didn't even look back. Although Tangy Chen was sad, she did not feel it was a pity. There were some things that didn't belong to her from the start, so why should she force herself to continue walking down a dead end? Of course, she didn't understand what Lu Guangli was planning to do, so she didn't think too much about it. By the time she returned to her hospital room, Enchanting was already there. So, Tangy Chen did not enter the room to be a third wheel. Instead, she sat on a bench and looked up at the starry sky. Not too far away, Lu Guangli was still in his car. As he looked at Tangy Chen's profile, he seemed to be deep in thought. The next day, the hospital chief's daughter went straight to Lu Guangli's office. Dr. Lu, now that Yi Chen has resigned, I can replace her. Lu Guangli was in the middle of writing a medical report. When he heard this, he immediately lifted his head and said, if there's nothing else, please leave and close the door. Dr. Lu. Plus, without my permission, no one can replace my doctor. But she's already resigned. That still won't do. Lu Guangli replied firmly. How am I not as good as her? The hospital chief's daughter asked straightforwardly as she couldn't take it anymore. I've never compared the 2 of you because you have no right to. After speaking, Lu Guangli roared, get out. The hospital chief's daughter suffered a huge blow as she left Lu Guangli's office in tears. At this moment, Lu Guangli only felt one thing, annoyed. It seemed if he wanted to find the little rascal, he would need to put in a lot of effort. Fine. His methods were indeed wrong in the past. But he couldn't help but bully her. Chapter 999. Tongning's surgery plan was currently being finalized. So, Enchanting took some time out to personally discuss it with the doctors. Normally, at times like this, Enchanting would get someone familiar with Tongning to chat with her. The entertainment industry was constantly changing. Every day, newcomers appeared one after another. Meanwhile, people that mentioned Tongning gradually disappeared. Especially Long Jia, who was still working in the entertainment industry. As soon as she heard someone say that Tongning was past her prime, she couldn't help but retaliate, even though she knew Tongning didn't care. You don't know how realistic those people are. After seeing you retreat from the industry, Lin Weisin handed his wife over to a new agency to support. What's there to be angry about? He didn't do anything wrong. Isn't it obvious that he's stepping on you? He obviously asked you to take care of him in front of so many people at his wedding. Isn't his actions clearly telling the outside world that you're already in the past? I've only left for a short while and you're already like this. If I completely disappear, what will you do? Tongning shook her head and sighed. Long Jia, I know you've always had my best interests in mind. But, retreating from the industry was my personal choice. Since I've made my decision, I'm sure I know the consequences. I'm too small on my own. In the industry, who can stay famous for 8 to 10 years and remain an evergreen tree? Long Jia understood this logic. But without Tongning in the current entertainment industry, she felt she no longer had any meaning. I will return. Don't look at me with a sad face. But, in a year or 2, will you still be able to return? Would Tongning still be able to announce her comeback at a commercial event like when she was betrayed by Han Yufan? At that time, Tongning was 26 years old. But now, I have my ways. Ups and downs, big ups and big downs. Hadn't her life always been like this? Plus, she still hadn't recovered from Xia Hanmo's death. She still needed some time. I don't need the public to forget about me. But, you need to remember who my manager is. If you don't have confidence in me, then don't you have confidence in him? At this point, Long Jia finally remembered Enchanting. Right now, there are a lot of new agencies that have learned from you. The smart ones have already incorporated your tricks into their repertoire. But, we can't rule out the possibility of other managers using you to create hype. Alright, it's not easy for us to meet. Don't talk about these things. I will be having my surgery in 2 days. I want to be in my best condition to welcome my daughter into the world. By the way, I won't talk about anything else. Superstar Media recently hired a mangaka called Han Shiocha. He's quite interesting and he draws sci-fi. Should I introduce him to you? I think he might be of help to you. Tongning thought for a moment and replied, let's talk about it after the surgery. All right. Long Jie had no idea that she had invited a wolf into her house. Luckily, Tongning did not agree to come into contact with the artist. Her priority was to have a child. Plus, Tongning did not think she needed an artist. She was going to use Qiao Sen's designs until the very end. She was going to fulfill Qiao Sen's wish. After Long Jie left, Mo Ting returned to the hospital room and confirmed the surgery was scheduled for 2 days later. However, seeing Tongning in a daze, he couldn't help but ask, what's wrong? Long Jie came over and told me a lot about the entertainment industry and some gossip. I haven't had time to digest it all. It seems, I'll need to limit the number of times she visits, Mo Ting replied. Don't. She made it sound so interesting. She talked about who cheated and who went to Thailand. It's a good way to kill time. In reality, Tongning didn't want to be completely cut off from the entertainment industry. Just like Long Jie said, it was easy to come out, but it was hard to go back. After hearing Tongning's words, Mo Ting sat down beside her and held onto her hand. I feel like you've suffered a lot and given up a lot by marrying me. We've already been married for so many years. Why do you still say things like that? Tongning asked. If two people argue too much when they're together, will they be able to spend the rest of their lives together? Mo Ting sighed and patted Tongning on the head. I'll take care of our daughter after she's born. I don't want you to give up on anything. But, I'm almost 30 years old. Plus, I've always placed you first. Mo Ting did not say another word. He simply wanted time to pass faster. He wanted the children to grow up on their own without Tongning having to worry about them. But he was also worried. He hoped time would pass a little slower so he could spend more time with his lover. Humans were always this contradictory. No matter how old you are, no matter what the outside world is like, as long as there's something you still want to do and you're willing to do it, I will help you achieve it. Tongning smiled and nodded her head. Of course, she had no idea how serious Mo Ting was when he said these words. As a result, after their daughter was born, the most common image that appeared on the media was President Mo carrying the little princess out. Of course, this was a story for another time. Endure for another 2 days. It'll be over soon. You and our daughter will both be safe. Tongning wasn't worried about this. Although she was always faced with a crisis, the outcome wasn't always bad. But, just as Tongning disappeared from the entertainment industry, a few small-time artists appeared that copied Tongning's appearance and went for plastic surgery. Wasn't there someone that used to be called Mini Tongning? However, they didn't end up well. But, that was similar, not as specific as this. Now, they were starting to clash. For the sake of fame, they were willing to do anything. While Tongning was waiting to give birth, Tang Yichen returned to the military hospital. Originally, she wanted to sneak over to pick up some things, but Lu Guangli stopped her in the office. Why are you acting so sneakily? Are you afraid of seeing someone? Tang Yichen was a little surprised as she turned around and looked at Lu Guangli. This has nothing to do with you. I originally arranged for you to be promoted, but I never expected you to leave. Would you be so kind? Tang Yichen shook her head in disbelief. Regardless, since I've already left, all of this has no meaning to me. Give your chance to the next person. Surprisingly, Lu Guangli did not cause her any trouble. However, at the entrance of the hospital, she bumped into the hospital chief's daughter. Did you think it was a coincidence? I heard that you were back, so I purposely waited for you here, the hospital chief's daughter humphed. The hospital chief's daughter humphed. I couldn't accept it. You were already gone, yet Dr. Lu didn't want me to replace you. So, I asked him how I couldn't compare to you. Guess what he said? He actually said that I'm not good enough to be compared to you, the hospital chief's daughter said as she crossed her arms. Chapter 1000. I really can't tell what's so good about you. I'm about to leave, so there's no point in talking to me about this. From now on, you'll have the advantage of being close to me. What's so bad about that? Tang Yichen laughed. Don't tell me you won't be able to live in peace even after I leave? At least you know what's good for you. After all, not many people can compete with me for something that I want. Tang Yichen couldn't help but laugh. If Lu Guangli was so easy to woo, he wouldn't be alone right now. In that case, I wish you the best of luck. After speaking, Tang Yichen walked past the hospital chief's daughter and left. But, just as they walked past each other, the hospital chief's daughter added, "When the time comes, I'll treat you to my wedding." However, the hospital chief's daughter did not get the chance to be arrogant because Lu Guangli was standing not too far behind them. After hearing their conversation, he immediately walked over, grabbed onto Tang Yichen's arm and kissed her on the lips in front of everyone. Wow! Seeing this, everyone let out a scream. Even Tang Yichen was shocked. A moment later, Lu Guangli let go of Tang Yichen and smiled as he reminded, "Shouldn't you close your eyes when kissing?" Tang Yichen was completely stunned, not knowing how to react. Afterwards, Lu Guangli pulled Tang Yichen into his embrace and said to the hospital chief's daughter, "Since Yichen is leaving, I don't think there's a need to hide our relationship anymore." "What relationship do we have?" Tang Yichen asked as she struggled. "What do you think?" Lu Guangli pretended to ask as Tang Yichen lowered her head. "Apart from you, the only person I've kissed is my dog." "No, the two of you don't have that kind of relationship." The hospital chief's daughter looked like she couldn't accept the truth. "The two of you obviously aren't. Do we need to explain our private matters to you?" Lu Guangli mocked before he turned to look at Tang Yichen. "You can leave first. I'll come look for you later." Tang Yichen ran away. She really did run away because she couldn't understand what Lu Guangli was trying to say. This man was extremely dangerous. She had to run away as soon as possible. On the surface, Tang Yichen appeared straightforward, but when it came to relationships, she wasn't brave at all. As soon as she sensed danger in front of her, she would immediately hide in her shell. Lu Guangli was well aware of Tang Yichen's personality, so he decided to put a stamp on her first. Otherwise, this woman might one day obey the Tang family's wishes and go on a blind date with a rich man. Needless to say, he was right. Tang Yichen did indeed have this plan. She wanted to distance herself from Lu Guangli. "Now, let's see how you're going to escape." By the time Tang Yichen returned to the hospital, her face was flushed red. All she could think about was their kiss. Tongning noticed her abnormality and couldn't help but ask, "You've been acting weird ever since you returned to the hospital. What are you thinking about? Your face is so red." "I'm fine." Tang Yichen quickly cleared her throat and turned her attention back to Tongning's documents. "Tomorrow, you will be doing all sorts of tests to see if you're suitable for surgery. So, you should get some rest tonight." Tongning nodded her head. "Don't worry. There are risks, but I will definitely control them to the minimum for you." Tongning nodded her head again. In reality, this wasn't a major surgery to begin with, so Tongning wasn't too worried. Since she had already handed her life over, worrying too much wouldn't do her and the baby any good. The night before the surgery, Mo Ting and Xia Yuling went to the hospital room with the two kids to cheer on their mother. As the older brother, Mo Zishi was completely stunned by all the new things in the hospital. Meanwhile, Mo Zichen sat obediently on Tongning's bed. When the adults weren't paying attention, he would secretly pull up her blanket. But, when Tongning turned to look at him, he would pretend like he didn't care. Tongning was already used to this child's miraculous side, so she did not appear surprised and pretended not to see anything. After all, she still couldn't explain why Mo Zichen was so mature at such a young age. "When I first gave birth to you, I also felt a lot of discomfort. Perhaps it's hereditary. That's why you suffered a little when you gave birth. Luckily, Mo Ting was always by your side," Xia Yuling said. "Don't think about the entertainment industry right now. After your daughter is born, you will be even busier." "Mom, thank you for taking care of the two rascals. Why are you being so courteous with me?" Xia Yuling glared. Tongning let out a gentle laugh and did not say another word. At this moment, because her family was by her side, she did not feel the slightest bit of fear. The next morning, Tongning went through her final checkup and entered the operating theater at around 8 a.m. Mo Ting stayed by her side as he watched her enter the operating theater. "When you come out, everything will be fine." "I'm not sick, I'm just giving birth," Tongning smiled. "Don't worry. I'll wait for you outside." Mo Ting leaned over and placed a kiss on Tongning's forehead. "Okay. Don't worry, there won't be any problems." Tang Yichen comforted from the other side of the bed. "Let's go in." The entire hospital was silent because Mo Ting's security was strict and on point. Soon, Tongning was wheeled into the operating theater. A moment later, the words "operation" lit up. While Tongning was in the middle of her surgery, Someone was attending a commercial event under the guise of a replica of Tongning. Everyone knew that this female artist had undergone plastic surgery to copy Tongning. Naturally, there was a lot of controversy. But one couldn't deny the fact that there were plenty of performers in the industry. So what if they were scolded? After all, there were still people paying the bills and they were still popular. There were plenty of ways for Tongning to be used. Was Hai Rue going to pursue them one by one? Has she gone crazy from wanting to be famous? Fuck. Do these people know that they're disgusting? Tongning's face is very recognizable. I can't believe someone's trying to copy her. Tongning has a good figure. But she's getting old. As a result, even though Tongning was no longer in the industry, there were still rumors about her. Because of this, Long Jie felt uncomfortable. These people are shameless. Tongning has already announced that she's retreating from the industry. Why can't they let her off the hook? Because it's someone else's right, even if it's plastic surgery. Han Xiuqia said in an objective manner as he arrived to hand in his script. Plus, Tongning is no longer active in the industry. Even if someone copies her, so what? She didn't copy you. You have no idea how disgusting it is. Chapter 1001. Since it's a classic, it doesn't matter how well someone imitates it, they're just trying to please the public. So, you don't need to be angry. After thinking about it carefully, Long Xiuqia realized that Long Xiuqia was right. Don't you have confidence in Tongning? Tongning already has a son and a daughter. She's already a winner in life. If she doesn't care about it, why should you? After hearing this, Long Jie felt a lot more relaxed. So, she smiled at Han Xiuqia. I never thought that a manhua artist like you would be so good at consoling people. Han Xiuqia smiled and replied, I'm still hoping that you'll introduce me to Tongning. I'm really interested in her sci-fi films. Don't worry, it's not convenient for her at the moment, but she'll definitely get the chance in the future. Han Xiuqia shrugged his shoulders. The closer he got to Tongning, the more excited he became. Especially after he left Superstar Media, every time he learned a little more about Tongning from Long Jie, he became even more curious about her. As for the people that tried to imitate Tongning, he simply thought it was fun. The more they imitated her, the more he understood the joy of controlling them. However, when it came to interacting with Tongning in person, there was still a huge gap. He was determined to appear in Tongning's life as soon as possible. After almost 3 hours of surgery, Tongning finally gave birth to her daughter. It didn't take long for Tongning to wake up. However, her wrinkled daughter had been lying in an incubator from the moment she was born. As she was born prematurely and had undergone a cesarean section, her body's resistance wasn't as strong as a child born naturally, so she needed to be carefully cared for. As soon as Tongning woke up and saw Mo Ting, she looked down at her flat stomach and asked, Where's the child? Have you checked? Everything's fine. The doctor is currently doing a series of tests, Mo Ting replied as he held onto Tongning's hand. If you're still tired, close your eyes and sleep for a little longer. Tongning shook her head. I've slept for long enough. Long Jie and the others wanted to visit, but I told them to come another day. Ting. I want to go home, Tongning said lazily. Not yet. But, I promise you from now on, I won't make you suffer the pain of childbirth again, Mo Ting promised. 3 babies is more than enough. After hearing this, Tongning smiled as she looked at Mo Ting with a gentle gaze. I like it when there are more children and it's more lively. With them around, they won't feel lonely. Mo Ting did not say another word. He simply stood up and pulled Tongning into his embrace. From now on, if you want to do something, go ahead and do it. I don't want to be tied down like this anymore. This isn't binding. Just as the couple were hugging each other, Tang Yichen walked into the room. As soon as she saw the intimate couple, she couldn't help but say, It's best if you don't move too much right now. After all, you just had a surgery. You should get some rest. How's the baby? Don't you trust me? It's not a big problem. The most important thing for you right now is to take care of yourself. There are so many people taking care of the child. Sis, thank you so much, Tongning said sincerely. If it was anyone else, I would have been worried. That's enough. We're family. There's no need to be so polite. I simply came to tell you that the child is doing well. Rest well and continue with your work. After speaking, Tang Yichen stepped out of the room. She originally planned to get some rest after dealing with Tongning's matter. But, just as she stepped out of the room, Lu Guangli immediately pulled her over. "What are you doing?" Tang Yichen screamed in fear. She had been quite frightened by the kiss from the other day. "It seems you still haven't realized that you belong to me." Lu Guangli let go of Tang Yichen and crossed his arms across his chest. His gaze was cunning, like he was staring at his prey. "Lu Guangli, if you want to play, go find someone else." "I don't like being teased by you," Tang Yichen replied in a wrong tone. "Are you playing tricks on me?" After hearing this, Lu Guangli once again leaned over and kissed Tang Yichen. Tang Yichen was stunned as she covered her mouth. "Lu Guangli. Indeed, teasing you is fun. But, this time, I'm being serious," Lu Guangli said as he looked at Tang Yichen. Lu Guangli said as he looked at Tang Yichen. "I've made you my sidekick for so long. Don't you feel like your status is special?" "I really don't," Tang Yichen humphed. "At least, no normal woman would like to be teased like this. But, I like to bully you. I only like to bully you." Tang Yichen's face suddenly turned red. "Lu Guangli, what's wrong with you? You've changed so much that you're no longer yourself." "Stupid woman, whether I'm bullying you or protecting you, I've only ever treated you like this. I've never treated anyone else like this. How special do you want me to be? Can't you tell how much I care about you?" Lu Guangli wrapped his arms around Tang Yichen. "I don't want the hospital chief's daughter. I simply want you. Otherwise, why do you think I've been staying at the military hospital all this time? I'm only happy because you like it. Otherwise, I could go anywhere I want." "You're too naive. Do you really think I have a deep relationship with the military hospital? Isn't it all because I want to protect you? With your personality, did you think you could have gotten this far without anyone protecting you? Yet, you're not appreciative of my kindness and left the hospital." After hearing this, Tang Yichen's heart began to race. "But, I've already left. What should I do?" "It's fine if you leave. My alma mater wants me to go back to teach, and that's exactly what I'm planning to do." "You can be my assistant," Lu Guangli said. "I need to keep you by my side in order to be at ease. Aren't you going to ask me if I'm willing? You've been by my side for so many years. Even when I bully you, you're already used to it. Since that's the case, why don't you just stick with me and be my sidekick?" "That seems to make sense," Tang Yichen stuttered. In reality, she had already compromised with Lu Guangli. "I've decided to set up my own research lab. Do you want to follow me?" Hearing this question, Tang Yichen lifted her head and looked at Lu Guangli with a blushing face. "I don't know anything and I'm not very good at relationships. Who knows you better than I do?" Lu Guangli asked himself. "Plus, I'm often confused and I'm often one-track-minded. I know that. But, I'm very serious about relationships. Once I've started, I don't want it to end and I don't want others to treat me like a toy. So, if you simply want to play with me today." Chapter 1002. "I really want to strangle you to death," Lu Guangli humphed. He had already said it so bluntly, but this woman was still imagining things. He really wanted to find a place to press her down and kiss her. Soon, a nurse passed by the corridor and saw the two of them. She quickly went up and said, "Dr. Tang, Dr. Lin is looking for you." "All right, I'll be right there." After the nurse left, Tang Yichen turned to leave. But Lu Guangli stopped her. "Where are you going? What's so shameful about me? Also, I haven't seen teacher for a long time." Then let's go," Tang Yichen said in a daze. In fact, she really looked smart and not willing to suffer losses. But in fact, in the world of love, she was a blank. She was so silly that it made people feel sorry for her. Soon, the couple arrived outside Tongning's room. As soon as Tongning saw Lu Guangli following behind Tang Yichen, she immediately guessed something. Dr. Lin was shocked as well. "Guangli, I haven't seen you for a long time. Why did you visit my teacher in the hospital?" "Teacher, Yichen has caused you trouble," Lu Guangli said in a serious tone. In reality, he was declaring his ownership. Dr. Lin froze for a moment before she suddenly understood what he was trying to say. "I knew it. Dr. Lu is a medical genius. Why would he suddenly appear in my small hospital? So, it's because he's Yichen's family. As long as she's too stupid, I'm worried about her no matter what." Lu Guangli did not hide his concern for Tang Yichen. Dr. Lin smiled and said, "That's enough. Do you think I'll eat your girlfriend? Back in school, I was always curious about what kind of girl you liked. I never expected you to like Ichenj. But, this is good news. I hope teacher can take good care of Ichen. I don't need you to tell me." Tongning looked at Lu Guangli with deep animosity. Although this medical genius had helped them a lot, did he really think that he could chase Tang Ichen away just like that? "Have you asked the family for their opinion? I was wondering why your face has been like a monkey's but for the past 2 days. It turns out, it's all because of him," Tongning said. "Hasn't he been bullying you? Moreover, you also said that he is the person you want to stay away from. Mrs. Mo, it's best not to get involved in other people's private matters." Lu Guangli didn't like Tongning either because she kept bothering his little sidekick. Even though they were sisters, he still minded. "Dr. Lu, smart people won't offend your sister-in-law." "What sister-in-law? You're speaking too early." Tang Yichen's face turned red again. Who could endure being surrounded by a room full of people discussing her? "All right, kids can talk about their feelings when they get home. Now, let's talk business." Dr. Lin quickly changed the topic. "Tongning, I actually have a regret to tell you. Although you've safely given birth to 3 children, it's always like a game. So, I suggest you don't have any more children in the future. Even if you do, with your current condition, I'm afraid it's not suitable for you to have any more children," Dr. Lin said. "Giving birth to a daughter is already the limit of your body. In other words, you no longer have the ability to reproduce." After hearing this, Tongning did not say a word as she looked at Mo Ting nervously. Mo Ting held onto Tongning's hand and said with a raspy voice, "I simply hope that Dr. Lin can take care of my wife's body. As for children, we definitely won't have any more children." "That's good. President Mo, I know you care about Tongning a lot, so I won't tell you anything else. As for your daughter, she's fine, but she will definitely have some minor problems like a premature baby. For example, her immune system is low and she will fall sick more easily than normal babies. You need to be prepared for this." "Thank you, Dr. Lin. You're welcome. After all, I'm still Ichen's teacher. Since that's the case, I won't disturb your rest any longer. As for your recovery, considering your status, you can go home as soon as possible." Actually, Tongning still hadn't laid eyes on her daughter. She still hadn't gotten out of bed yet. "Ting, you should give your daughter a name while you're at it." "Mo Zian." Mo Ting replied straightforwardly. "I've actually been thinking about it for a long time." "Okay, Zian it is," Tongning nodded. "Since your daughter has already been born, you can start thinking about going overseas." "I'll never go back on my word." For the first few months, Tongning wasn't going to leave her daughter's side. Because of the need to breastfeed her and because she didn't want to miss out on her daughter's perfect time, she decided to delay her departure. Seeing the happy family, Lu Guangli dragged Tang Yichen out of the house. "Take me home." "Hey, aren't you embarrassed? Isn't a man supposed to take a woman home? Stop blabbering nonsense." Lu Guangli placed Tang Yichen in the front passenger seat of his sports car and buckled her seatbelt. "Your sister already has 3 children. Aren't you worried about yourself?" "Why should I be worried?" Tang Yichen humphed. "You're not worried, but I am worried. Let's familiarize ourselves with each other's space tonight. In the future." "Convenient for what?" Tang Yichen asked cautiously. "Convenient for me to eat you up." In reality, although the couple had known each other for many years, Tang Yichen had never been to Lu Guangli's home. "Are you really planning to let me into your home?" Lu Guangli laughed as he drove. "Don't worry, I won't eat you up tonight." Tang Yichen shrunk her head and did not say another word. Soon, the couple arrived at Lu Guangli's apartment. As they were about to enter his territory, Tang Yichen felt a little nervous. After all, there were some relationships that needed to be taken to the next step, which meant that she needed to understand this person better. Perhaps, she would be disappointed. "Why aren't you going in?" Lu Guangli asked as he stood behind Tang Yichen. "I'm afraid that after I go in, your image in my heart will be destroyed." "What do you think I am?" Lu Guangli shook his head as he led Tang Yichen into his home. To Tang Yichen's surprise, Lu Guangli's home was very clean and tidy. In fact, it was befitting of a doctor. The decor was simple and the wall was filled with medical books. Tang Yichen couldn't help but curse at herself for being so brainless. She always thought of others in such a bad light. You're the first woman to come in, so I didn't prepare any slippers. You can wear mine. Have you really thought it through? You want to be with me? Tang Yichen confirmed. She needed to know that she wasn't dreaming. What's there to think about? If I don't take you in as my mistress, who would be able to stand you? Plus, I've been protecting you for so many years. There's no need to replace me, right? Chapter 1003. Tang Yichen lowered her head and did not say another word. Originally, she thought it was all a dream. Lu Guangli liked her? No, since you like me, why didn't you confess after so many years? Because you're too stupid. Lu Guangli couldn't help but tap Tang Yichen on the head as his face turned slightly red. After all, he was a proud medical genius. He really knew nothing about chasing after women. If it weren't for his brother at home who corrected him in time, he might have been watching this stupid thing preparing to throw herself into the river of blind dates. My IQ is that of a normal person. Of course, it can't compare to a genius like you. Tang Yichen rolled her eyes before she began to tour around Lu Guangli's apartment. At this time, Lu Guangli sat down comfortably on the sofa and held onto the back of the sofa as he said, I have a brother who is currently the CEO of Guangli International. My parents are still alive, but they live in Norway. His family isn't very wealthy, but it should be more than enough for you, the second miss of the Tang family. What are you doing? Tell me everything. Lu Guangli replied, As for my relationship history, I'm sure you know it better than I do. There are many people who have pursued me, but, stop being so smug, Tang Yichen humphed. Since you're with me, you'll have to listen to me from now on. After hearing this, Lu Guangli moved closer to Tang Yichen and said seductively, I can give it to you right now. A week after Yen Er was born, Tongning was discharged from the hospital to rest. However, Yen Er still needed to stay in the incubator for a month. As soon as Tongning returned home, she began her recovery training. At the same time, Mo Ting hired a nutritionist to create a customized diet for her. So with enough time, her body would become even more perfect and tasty than before. During this time, Mo Ting also tried to find a suitable school for Tongning. As he wanted to keep a low profile, he arranged for an apartment near the school and decided to take his daughter with him. During this 1 year, he would be flying between 2 places at once. But, Tongning requested to take Yen Er with her so she could take care of her more easily. Everything was progressing smoothly. However, within the industry, the fame of the small-time artists that used Tongning's name continued to rise. She didn't appear as a hateful person, nor did she appear to be fighting for anything. Her agency simply created a name for her because she wanted to help Tongning accomplish many things that she had never been able to. When it came to plastic surgery, the small-time artist openly admitted to it and did not try to hide it. In fact, no matter how much the public doubted her, she was still able to attend all sorts of events in a good state. It was clear to see how strong she was. Plus, Tongning was no longer in the industry, so no one was there to uphold justice. As long as there was gossip for them to discuss, they were satisfied. After returning home, Tongning heard about the incident and was reminded of the little Tongning from before. No matter what was fake couldn't be real. In a short period of time, Han Xiuqi's apartment was filled with portraits of Tongning. Whether it was of her as a model or as an actress, he seemed to be obsessed with a feeling of controlling Tongning in his hands. When the agent saw it, she was shocked. I haven't been here for a few days and your apartment has become like this? Are you serious? Aha. Han Xiuqi nodded his head as he altered the portrait. That's why I told you to keep me updated on Tongning's movements. She is now my food for thought. But there's no point in doing this. It's not like Tongning will like you. No matter what, I want to appear in front of her. She is currently my inspiration. The agent couldn't take it anymore and didn't know how to stop him. Forget it, I can't be bothered with you. If you weren't the CEO's brother, he wouldn't have agreed to let you sign with Superstar Media. I think you should know when to stop. Otherwise, you might end up embarrassing yourself before you even get to see Tongning. If you're not here to help me, then you don't need to say another word. The agent sat on a stool and looked at Han Xiuqi helplessly. Why was a man like this acting up all of a sudden? If you want to know about Tongning's movements, wouldn't it be faster for you to go to Superstar Media and ask? I can't let superstar media see through my intentions. Otherwise, what happens next would be pointless. Han Xiucha was wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses and looked exactly like a beast in human clothing. In that case, I'm going to leave you to your own devices. As a woman, the agent naturally didn't like men acting like this. So she did not help Han Xiucha, nor did she expose him. She simply pretended that she didn't know anything. After all, she couldn't understand why Han Xiucha would give up on a bright future and do something so incomprehensible. Han Xiucha was enjoying himself. At times, the agent wondered if it had something to do with the maternal love that he had lost since he was young. After Tongning was able to get out of bed, she asked Mo Ting to take her to the hospital to see her daughter. Although the little one was doted on and had people visiting her every day, Tongning still couldn't wait. But this time, they were accompanied by the two troublemakers at home. In order to let them know about their sister's birth as soon as possible, Tongning couldn't wait to take the two little guys out. Mo Zishi was at his most active and mischievous age, but Mo Zichin was like an old man as he sat quietly beside his mother. Look at him. Tongning gestured for Mo Ting to look at her son. However, Mo Ting was used to it. I'll take him to do some tests one day. Perhaps, he really is different from the average person. Both husband and wife were well aware that there were still many unusual aspects about this child. So, Tongning nodded her head. However, there were times when she couldn't help but sigh. She didn't want her child to achieve much. She simply wanted him to live a happy life. Soon, the family arrived at the hospital. The couple carried the two older brothers to the sterilization room and looked at Yen Er through the glass. Our daughter resembles you a lot, Mo Ting said. Doesn't that mean there will be a lot of suitors? Tongning laughed. I'm afraid it won't be easy to become the son-in-law of the Mo family. Of course, with a strict father like Mo Ting, who would have the guts? I've already booked a plane ticket to England for you. I've also contacted the school. As soon as you arrive, you will be able to attend classes. Tongning looked at her daughter and then at Mo Ting helplessly. Why are you suddenly bringing this up? Since you've decided to further your studies, you should do it as soon as possible, Mo Ting said. Don't you want to fulfill Qiao Sen's wish? By the way, are you planning to give up halfway with the Ant Queen? You won't. Chapter 1004. You will only stand at the top because you are my woman. Mo Ting pulled Zichin into his arms. Mrs. Mo, you should shine in a more dazzling place. You deserve it. Tongning smiled as she looked at the charming man beside her and nodded her head. I will definitely stand by your side. Mo Ting would only be studying abroad. It didn't mean he was going to be separated. So this year, he would spend half of his time in the UK. As for the two sons, they would temporarily place them in the Tang family home. Tongning believed that Xia Yuling and the rest of the Tang family would give them a good education. 3 months later, Yen Er had been nurtured to a healthy state. With a chubby little face, it was impossible to tell that she was a premature baby. On the day of her departure, Tongning did not say goodbye to anyone. Not even Long Jie and Lin Qian. She quietly left Beijing. Mo Ting kept a low profile as he left with the mother and daughter. As soon as they arrived at the airport and waited in the VIP room, they saw the fake Tongning on the television. She was attending an event for an electronics brand. On the large screen was an artist that looked 80% similar to Tongning. She was wearing a long red dress and had a good figure and was young and beautiful. She greeted the media with the standard pose of an artist. The reporters loved to take photos of her because she was currently very controversial and cooperative with the media. It seemed, every newcomer treasured their exposure and especially their relationship with the media. Unlike Tongning, who said that she hated entertainment reporters the most. So, they worked even harder to make the replica Tongning famous. They wanted to give her a loud slap in the face. Look, Tongning's era had already passed and she had no way of turning things around. Seeing this, Tongning was filled with emotions. From being a model to becoming a mother of 3, a lover and a family, this was probably the biggest reward she had gained from being in the entertainment industry for so many years. Mo Ting carried Yen Er in his arms and held onto Tongning's hand. Don't worry about this. Just focus on your studies overseas. If Mo Ting wanted to make someone famous, there was no saying that he couldn't turn things around. Especially since Tongning wasn't as naive as she appeared on the outside. Meanwhile, the other guests waiting in the VIP room were bored and watching entertainment news to pass the time. As soon as they saw the fake Tongning, they couldn't help but say to their friends, "This imposter is running around everywhere, yet the real Tongning hasn't come out to fight back." It seems like Tongning doesn't have any place in the entertainment industry anymore. Life is full of ups and downs. Tongning has been popular for a few years now, but it's a shame she didn't make it to the end. Do you think she'll come back? Wait for her to come back? How many Tongnings were there in the industry? Besides, she's old now. She's a mother of 3. Even if she wants to sell herself, she can only play the role of a mother or something. The entertainment industry is so realistic. That's true. Tongning stood behind the two and listened to their conversation. However, she did not reveal the slightest bit of displeasure. However, when they turned around and saw Tongning, they broke out in a cold sweat. Damn it, I didn't check the almanac when I went out today. Come on, let's find another place to sit. The 2 young ladies felt ashamed of being caught, so they consciously changed their seats and pretended that nothing had happened. But no matter how bad their words were, they were still the truth. Seeing Mo Ting's expression, it didn't seem like he was going to let the matter go. So, Tongning immediately grabbed onto his hand and said, "There's no need, let them be. Let's go, the plane is about to take off." Afterwards, the 2 women carried their daughters and left. But, this incident was soon written about in the tabloids. Former superstar Tongning leaves Beijing down and out. No longer popular. Tongning has ruined her character, but she has also ruined herself. This was probably the last time Tongning appeared in front of the media after announcing her retreat from the industry. Even though, they only managed to catch a glimpse of her and Mo Ting's back. At this time, Long Jie and Lin Qian finally found out that Tongning had already left the country. She didn't even arrange for anyone to send her off when she left. No wonder the media wrote things like this. Long Jie was unwilling to accept the truth. These pieces of trash are going to be slapped in the face by Tongning sooner or later. As for that fake Tongning, I get angry just by looking at her. Your main task now is to continue superstar media. Don't let people think that superstar media has become a paper tiger just because Ning Jie isn't around, Lin Qian comforted. Lin Qian tried to convince Long Jie. This is her hard work. No matter what, we need to continue it. Do I need you to tell me that? But, I can't help but want to mess with the fake Tongning. There will always be a chance. Lin Qian said with a deeper meaning. She believed in Tongning from the beginning. As a result, news of Tongning's departure naturally reached Han Xiuqi's ears. At the same time, Tongning's manager also received news that she was going overseas to further her studies. It seems our chance has come. Hai Rue is a big organization, so Mo Ting can't possibly stay overseas to accompany Tongning. If we don't make a move now, when will we? Are you crazy? Are you going overseas too? What are you going to do with your manuscript? I'll send you my manuscript on a regular basis. What does that have to do with where I am? Han Xiuqi replied. Find out where Tongning is studying and immediately arrange my schedule. After the manager heard this, she rolled her eyes. Forget it, I can't stop you. After all, I'm your manager. But, let me warn you, Tongning is no longer famous. If you get too close to her, you might get dragged down with you. With Tongning's talent, did you think she'd be willing to bury herself like this? Since she's studying overseas, it means she'll make a comeback. If you don't believe me, just wait and see. Han Xiuqi's manager was speechless as she rolled her eyes and left the apartment. Meanwhile, as Han Xiuqi closed his drawing board, he placed a kiss on the globe. Beauty Tang, I'm here. By the time they arrived in England, 10 hours had passed. Luckily, Yen Er did not show any signs of discomfort. As a result, she was smiling happily as soon as she arrived. Tongning couldn't help but be surprised. Your little lover will definitely grow up to be an optimistic princess. Mo Ting stroked Tongning's hair like he did when they first got married. Take a look at your new home. There's no need to look. I know you'll make a replica of Hyatt Regency. Mo Ting couldn't help but smile as he led Tongning into the apartment. As expected, it was no different from home. This reduced the discomfort between her and Yen Er and made them feel a lot closer to each other in a foreign country. We've been on a plane for the whole day. Go to work first. I'll make dinner, Tongning said after coaxing her daughter to sleep. I know Hai Rue has a lot of things waiting for you to deal with. I'll call you in the study room in a moment. Ting wrapped his arms around Tongning and placed a deep kiss on her lips. Mrs. Mo, it's already been 3 months. You definitely need to feed me. Chapter 1005. Tongning immediately understood what he was hinting at. However, her daughter was only 3 months old. Even if she managed to coax Yen to sleep, she would still be a little worried. But her worries were unnecessary. Ting had already thought of this, so he had prepared a crib in the room. Not only that, the crib was also soundproof. Seeing this, Tongning couldn't help but smile. Men indeed couldn't stay hungry for too long. During dinner, Ting said to Tongning, "The maid I arranged will arrive tomorrow. If you and I aren't around, you can leave Yen in her care." "Is she reliable?" "She is a very kind woman. Don't worry, she will treat Yen well." Ting understood Tongning's worries. In reality, he was also worried about her. But the maid Lu Che arranged had gone through a strict selection process and was chosen from tens of thousands of people. So, she shouldn't be wrong. Tongning nodded. She was currently in a foreign country and was no longer in Beijing. This was not her own territory, so she had to be cautious. After dinner, Tongning took Yen to a bath. After coaxing her to sleep, she lay in the bathtub on her own. It wasn't until Ting entered the bathroom that she blushed and said, "Yen will need to sleep for 4 hours." In other words, Ting naturally understood what Tongning was hinting at, so he knelt down and leaned in close to her. "Help me undress." Tongning stretched out her hands and unbuttoned Ting's shirt. Slowly, his perfect upper body was revealed to her. As she was pregnant, the couple hadn't been intimate like this for a long time. So, Ting stepped into the bathtub, lay down beside Tongning and pulled her into his embrace. "What's wrong?" Tongning asked curiously after Ting did not move for quite some time. "I'm afraid your body hasn't fully recovered yet," Ting replied cautiously. "The doctor said I'm perfectly fine, okay?" After speaking, Tongning wrapped her arms around Ting's neck and whispered, "I missed you too." Hearing these seductive words, Ting no longer held back as he carried Tongning out of the bathtub. Droplets of water dripped down his face as he walked over to the soft bed. He then pulled down the curtains because Yen crib was right next to it. "Since Mrs. Mo has already said so, then I won't hold back tonight." As the beige curtains fell, the bodies that were surrounded gradually overlapped with each other. Perhaps it was because Yen understood that her parents had not seen each other for a long time. She did not throw a tantrum that night. In fact, she was unusually well behaved. However, when Tongning woke up the next day, she found it extremely tiring. In the early morning, the servant arrived. It was a middle-aged woman in her early 50s. Obviously, she was not British. "Good morning, madam. Are you also from Beijing?" "Yes, Mr. Mo personally selected me from Beijing to help the madam adapt to life here." The servant was very understanding. "I'm already familiar with everything about Miss Yen. Madam can rest assured that I will take care of her." "Where's Ting?" "Sir is flying back to Beijing tomorrow morning," the maid replied. "Madam, you can call me Auntie Yun." Ting had arranged everything properly. There was nothing for her to worry about. All she needed to do now was report to school. It seemed, for the coming year, she would be able to peacefully enjoy her school life. In order to keep a low profile, Tongning decided to use the English name that she had when she was a model in France, Kira. The school was located by the riverside not too far away from the apartment. The school had produced a few world-class directors. So, what Tongning needed to do now was to study systematically and go from being a performer to being a producer. As for her classmates, they all had powerful backgrounds. But Tongning had no intention of getting close to them. So, she did not try to find out more about their backgrounds. In the film industry, European and American films generally look down on actors from Beijing. They would rather hire African actors than actors from Beijing. So, many famous actors from Beijing could only work as supporting actors when they went overseas. As a result, indirectly, they didn't think much of Tongning. Although they did not say it out loud, their words and gazes were filled with coldness towards Tongning. For the first 3 days, Tongning struggled a little. Although her English was fluent, she struggled to learn a lot of professional words and didn't excel in her studies. But, 3 days later, another transfer student arrived from Beijing. This transfer student was also from Beijing. Of course, it was Han Xiucha, the person that everyone wanted to be by Tongning's side. Han Xiucha thought that it would be easier for Tongning to get close to a fellow countryman in a foreign country. So, after class was over, he deliberately asked Tongning for directions. "Kira, I've just arrived at school. I want to know if there's a place nearby where I can provide for myself. Go straight ahead and turn right. The entire street is filled with food." After speaking, Tongning turned to leave. But Han Xiucha once again stopped her. "We're both from Beijing. Shouldn't we take care of each other?" "I can take care of myself," Tongning said with a smile before she turned to leave. This time, Han Xiucha did not continue to stop her. He knew that doing so would only make Tongning dislike him even more. Although Tongning hadn't interacted much with Han Xiucha, it didn't mean that she was naive. Above all, President Mo needed to understand the intentions of anyone that wanted to get close to Tongning. So it was impossible for Han Xiucha to leave a good impression on Tongning. After returning home, Tongning told Mo Ting about Han Xiucha. Mo Ting directly said, "This is Superstar Media's newly signed cartoonist. He's the one that Lin Weisin wanted to introduce you to. He's the artist that likes sci-fi. His brother is also the boss of an entertainment agency. Don't mind him too much. Perhaps it's just a coincidence." Tongning nodded her head and continued to focus on her studies. The next few days passed by smoothly. But the professor assigned them to work in small groups. Tongning and Han Xiucha, who were both from Beijing, were placed in the same group. But Tongning said to the professor, "I can do it on my own. The production of a film isn't just the work of one person. It also requires the input of others. So, I reject your suggestion." Han Xiucha was sitting not too far away as he looked at Tongning and smiled. After class, he walked over to Tongning and said, "You seem to be quite a loner. You're different from when you were in Beijing." "I simply want to keep a low profile and study. I know that no matter who you were in the past or what status you had in the past, you are still a student at this school. But you also need friends and cooperation. Don't reject me so quickly. Perhaps I might become a reliable partner for you." Tongning put away her documents and lifted her head to look at Han Xiucha. "I don't see a passion for studying in your eyes." Chapter 1006. After hearing this, Han Xiucha was filled with curiosity. "Rumor has it that you can read minds. Could it be that you're actually capable of it?" "Regardless of whether I can read minds or not, I'm not someone you can get close to. I think it's best if we keep our distance," Tongning replied. "I can't be friendly towards people that I don't like. So, I hope Mr. Han can keep his distance. You're so difficult to get along with." This time, Tongning did not respond as she turned to leave. Originally, she thought that even though she was ostracized by the foreigners, as long as she didn't interact with them, it wouldn't be a problem. But Han Xiucha made Tongning feel uncomfortable. "Share your movie ideas with me. Who knows, I might be able to help you. After all, my sci-fi comics are quite popular, aren't they? Plus, how are you going to complete your film on your own?" How annoying. Han Xiucha never expected to be rebuffed by Tongning. Indeed, Tongning wasn't easy to get along with. Only someone that she was familiar with would make her willingly open her heart. Thinking of this, Han Xiucha realized that Tongning was too difficult. But it was exactly what he wanted. But as soon as this man approached him, Mo Ting sensed danger. Of course, he never doubted Tongning's ability to deal with the opposite sex. After all, his wife never made him feel uncomfortable. But there were some things that he needed to be careful of. These foreigners' discrimination towards Asian actors really comes from the bottom of their hearts. After studying for a week, Tongning couldn't help but sigh in front of Mo Ting. "I've heard that people don't respect us, but I've never felt it so clearly before." "Have you been wronged?" "Not really. I simply don't like being treated as an outsider," Tongning replied. "I can understand competing in society because it's for profit. But in school, it can't be helped. We're too far behind." Tongning nodded her head in understanding. As the CEO of Hai Rue, he was bound to see this kind of treatment more often than not. Eastern actors were rarely respected in the West. Although with the rise of the East, the situation had improved, Eastern actors were still not welcomed in Europe and the US. In reality, the first few days were just a preview of how she would be disrespected. Because, as the professor continued to talk about cases, Tongning felt completely humiliated. Speaking of movies, let me give you an example. A certain country releases around 150 movies every year for 10 consecutive years. But, not a single one of them has made it to the international market. What does this mean? Their movie standards are still at the beginner level. The director looks like he hasn't graduated from primary school yet, or maybe he's still asleep. Relying on the support of the population, they can casually shoot a movie and get a good box office. So they won't take the so-called good movies seriously. So strictly speaking, they are just businessmen, not directors. Because in their eyes, it's written that I want money, not a message. But this is art. No one can insult art. Therefore, I can foresee that in the next 10 years, a certain country will not be able to come up with a film that can compete with us. The meaning and discrimination of these words were too obvious. It was so obvious that Tongning couldn't ignore it. So she lifted her head and rebutted the professor in fluent English. I only agree with part of what you said. Your arrogance is not worthy of other people's respect. As you say, the East still has a lot of room for improvement. But, in the next 10 years, our awakening will make you Westerners tremble in fear. Since you don't accept my point of view, why did you appear in my class? The professor asked. In other words, didn't the East still need to learn from the West to understand what a real movie was? If you're so capable, make it yourself. Because I admit that we are still weak, but we can learn and create. How dare you talk to me about creating? Do you even know what copyright means? No, but we are currently learning. No one knows what the world will look like in 10 years. We have a saying in the East, the latecomer catches up to the leader. I'm sure you understand what this means, right? The professor was speechless. He had no idea how to refute Tongning. All he could do was glare at her angrily. From now on, you don't need to attend my classes. Or, you can listen outside. Tongning closed her textbook and smiled. It seems, the professor is really afraid of the rise of the East. Get out. Tongning did not say another word as she walked out of the classroom with her head held high. At this time, Han Xiucha finally realized how sharp Tongning's thorn was. How could a woman love her country so much? In a place like this where she could be beaten up at any time, she still chose to offend the professor. Wasn't she here to further her studies? How did she offend the professor in just 1 week? Han Xiucha decided to have a chat with Tongning after class. But, just as he followed her to the school gates, she boarded Mo Ting's car. The couple quickly disappeared from Han Xiucha's sight. Yes, she was married, and had 3 children. At this moment, Han Xiucha suddenly felt a little disappointed. In the car, Tongning was very quiet. But, Mo Ting noticed something was wrong with his wife. Did you get into trouble? Not really, Tongning replied. I simply choked an old professor in class. You're almost 30 years old, yet you still can't control your emotions. But, you did a good job. If anyone makes you unhappy, I'll make them unhappy, Mo Ting laughed. So what happened in the end? He told me not to appear in his class. Was it that serious? Mo Ting asked. But, there wasn't a hint of worry in his voice. Since you can't attend, then don't. You can always learn on your own. You really understand me, Tongning replied as she leaned against Mo Ting's shoulder. These people are used to being arrogant. They don't know what respect is and they won't teach you anything important. There are a lot of things that you can only learn on your own. Plus, I'm more than willing to join a Western film crew. That's where I can learn. No, before that, the more he dislikes you, the more you need to appear in his class. I want him to know what it means to kneel in front of money. Since he thinks so highly of himself, I want to hear him apologize to you. Will he? Tongning asked curiously. Chapter 1007. He definitely will. Mo Ting replied as he looked at Tongning. Even if he doesn't like Asians, when it comes to you, he has no choice but to swallow his feelings. Tongning thought about it for a moment and realized what he said made sense. This wasn't something she should be humble about. Especially when faced with the discrimination of these foreigners, she shouldn't give in and allow herself to be bullied by a mere professor. Don't worry, you don't need to do anything. I know what to do. Mo Ting turned his head to look at Tongning and smiled happily. This time, you didn't completely retreat from the entertainment industry and didn't even hold back at Hai Rue. You didn't come here to get beaten up. Show me your courage. I want to see a Tongning that will never lower her head for anything. Tongning nodded her head. With Mo Ting's encouragement, the discomfort of being discriminated against and bullied immediately disappeared. As a result, the next day, Tongning arrived at the professor's class on time. However, as soon as the professor saw Tongning, he put down his documents and said, "Didn't I say that you don't need to attend my classes from now on? Are you Asians also thick-skinned? Or is it just you?" As soon as the professor's words were spoken, the classroom erupted in laughter. But Tongning sat in the same spot without moving. She waited until everyone had laughed enough before she asked in seriousness, "Professor, how dare you insult Asians in such a way? Have you ever been to the East?" The professor froze for a moment, unable to answer Tongning's question. The reason was simple. He had never been to the East. He looked down on Asian culture from the bottom of his heart and discriminated against them. If you're not answering, then you must have never been to the East. Since you've never been to the East, why do you look down on a country that you've never understood? Subjective. Yes, Asian culture is indeed not as advanced as Western culture, but we have our own uniqueness and charm. Yet, the professor is so arrogant. Why are you discriminating against us? You are simply using your strength to bully the weak. Are you discriminating against North Americans? The North Americans have so many outstanding works. But what do you Asians have to offer? We indeed don't have anything to offer. But, who was the winner of last year's Oscar? Was it the British? It was us Asians. Can you deny the efforts and achievements of us Easterners? And as a professor, what you're trying to convey is not cultural exchange and collision, but discrimination against me, an Easterner. Is this what you should do as a teacher? Movies are indeed art, but the art you speak of is a weapon you use to attack others? Is your art noble? The professor was left speechless. Tongning spoke so quickly that even a pure British man like him couldn't get a word in. More importantly, he had been teaching the film industry for decades, and no one had ever dared to be so disrespectful to him in class. However, he was left speechless by Tongning's scolding. Because this in itself was his personal prejudice and narrow-mindedness. In the past, there had been Chinese people that had been bullied, but no one had dared to confront him head-on like Tongning. At this moment, everyone looked at Tongning. She looked at the person who dared to challenge the professor, but the professor could not do anything to her. The professor's face turned pale, but there was nothing he could do. All he could do was digest the information in his hands for a moment before he threw down the documents in his hands and said to everyone, "Let's go back to class." Tongning sneered. Even though everyone looked at her with complicated expressions, why should she be afraid? Han Xiucha was sitting in a corner not too far away. He had personally witnessed Tongning making the professor speechless. This completely changed his impression of a woman. Was she really not afraid that the professor, or rather, the British people in the class, would attack her? However, everyone knew very well that the professor's discrimination was unreasonable in the first place. Even though they looked down on Chinese people, they would never openly make an enemy out of them. At most, they would say a few words behind their backs, but they could only do something behind their backs. Like this, Tongning became famous in the school. Of course, in the faraway UK, coupled with the fact that Tongning used her English name, not many people would match her to Tongning. After all, at this school, they didn't care about Asian artists. They looked down on them from the bottom of their hearts. But, after this incident, the situation was no longer the same. After class, the professor glared at Tongning as she left the classroom. But, Tongning simply returned his glare. She didn't need to be afraid. At this time, Han Xiucha walked up to her and gave her a thumbs up. "You are the first person in history that has dared to talk back to a professor." Tongning glanced at Han Xiucha before she turned around with the documents in her hands. The coldness that she displayed on purpose was obvious. She did not give any indication that she could get close to him. Han Xiucha had no choice but to follow behind Tongning unwillingly. How could there be such a difficult woman in this world? Because Tongning had offended the well-loved professor, many students began to secretly take notice of her. From now on, she was going to be in a lot of trouble. But Tongning didn't care. Mo Ting wasn't home today, so she had no choice but to drive back to the apartment. But, on the way back, she ran into someone deliberately following her. When she saw the car in her rearview mirror, she immediately sped up. "Madam, why are there people looking around outside the apartment?" Ignore them. Tongning hugged Yen Air and did not care about them at all. She knew that if these people dared to act recklessly, Mo Ting's bodyguards would definitely tear them to shreds. Doesn't that mean you won't have any privacy? It's fine. If they want to look, then let them look. Tongning guessed that the students that were trying to protect the professor would come up with plenty of dirty tricks to deal with her. But she wasn't someone that anyone could bully. The next morning, Tongning arrived at the library. But she ran into Han Xiucha. He must have calculated Tongning's time and deliberately waited in the library. If you continue to treat me with this attitude, I will also treat you with a very bad attitude. Tongning ignored him. I hate threats. I simply want to be friends with you. Be friends? Tongning turned around and looked at Han Xiucha. She felt his words were ridiculous. You've already chased me all the way overseas. I don't think you simply want to be friends with me. Did you investigate me? Han Xiucha suddenly felt excited. He felt like Tongning was starting to take notice of him. But Chapter 1008. Oh, you're thinking too much. My husband knows all the people I'm going to meet in advance. Tongning replied mercilessly. Han Xiucha leaned against the bookshelf and took a deep breath. He was helpless against Tongning. You're really unmoved by force or persuasion. So, can you stay away from me from now on? Tongning asked. You want to waste time, but I don't want to. Han Xiucha had no way of dealing with Tongning. All he could do was step aside. But he wanted to see Tongning's various reactions, especially when she fought back against the public. Her charm wasn't something that an ordinary woman possessed. She was truly captivating. As soon as she stepped out of the library, Tongning sensed that the people around her were looking at her differently. Even though she had already expected this moment, she couldn't help but sigh. It's this whore. Do you know? There are a few lives on his back. Did she come here because she couldn't survive in the East? How disgusting. The UK should stop such people from entering the country. I'm really surprised. Oriental women are all so dirty. Wherever Tongning went, people would point and gossip about her. It was only a matter of time before her identity was revealed. So, Tongning pretended not to hear anything. After all, she had nothing to fear. To make things worse, Tongning's identity was posted on the school's bulletin board. On the bulletin board, the entire page was filled with news about her in Beijing. They couldn't survive in that rotten place, so they came to England. Is our country a refugee shelter? Hey bitch, go back to your slums. Faced with such harsh insults, Tongning remained unmoved. In fact, some of them even wanted to make a move on her. But they were scared off by the bodyguards following behind her. Faced with this harsh environment, Tongning pretended not to notice. But it was inevitable that Beijing would receive news that Tongning couldn't survive in the capital and had gone overseas to embarrass herself. There were whole pages of newspapers and magazines about her being hung on the bulletin board at the English school. After seeing this, Long Jie was so angry that she slammed her hands on the table and stood up. These reporters have gone too far. Lin Qian had also seen the article, so she had no choice but to comfort Long Jie. Although we are angry, we have no choice but to swallow our anger. After all, Ning Jie is currently overseas. I've had enough. That fake Tongning is stepping all over Tongning's head. If I don't teach her a lesson, does she want to replace her? Even President Mo isn't anxious. Why can't you keep your cool? President Mo has been shuttling between the two countries. He knows Ning Jie's current situation better than anyone, yet he hasn't made a move yet. All we can do is wait. Sigh, why are my days so useless? Lin Qian understood that Long Jie was trying to help Tongning, but Tongning wasn't the type of person to take things lying down. The school seemed to have noticed Tongning's reaction, so they invited her to their office. Miss Tang, can you explain to us the origin of these rumors? In order not to damage the school's reputation, you have the responsibility to give us a clear explanation. Otherwise, we can only expel you. Tongning looked at the newspaper in the headmaster's hands and said politely, Sir, this is my private life and my privacy has been violated. Shouldn't you be investigating the culprit? I am the victim. Do you understand? The headmaster rubbed his nose and did not respond. Headmaster, you've seen my influence. Although it's not positive, I still maintain a high level of attention. So, if the school doesn't give me an explanation, then I will have no choice but to reveal the fact that you and the professors are discriminating against Asians. When that time comes, even if both sides suffer, I will not hesitate. The headmaster was helpless. He never expected Tongning to be so eloquent. As an adult, I trust the school will uphold justice for me. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to act recklessly. The headmaster weighed his options and finally agreed to Tongning's request. Okay, I will give you an explanation and clean up the school's bulletin board. But, you need to be mindful of your actions. Don't talk back to the professors again. I'm sorry, headmaster. Mutual respect is one of my principles. After speaking, Tongning left the headmaster's office. It seemed, there were a lot of people waiting for Tongning to drop out of school. In such a difficult environment and with so many supercilious looks, no one believed that she would be able to stay in school. But, when the results came out, no one expected it. Because, the next morning, all the news on the bulletin board had been cleaned up. The headmaster also issued a notice demanding that everyone respect the privacy of others and not infringe upon it. Otherwise they would be expelled. As soon as the results came out, everyone was convinced of Tongning's abilities. This Asian woman was not easy to deal with. Since that was the case, then they were going to beat her up in terms of results. At least, they were going to let her know that Asians were nothing more than lowly humans. As soon as Ting returned to England from Beijing, he heard about Tongning's heroic actions at school. Of course, from the moment he saw the news, he already knew that Tongning had done something big. But, he never expected that she would directly threaten the headmaster. But, this was Tongning. She couldn't keep a low profile no matter where she went. Afterwards, Ting looked at the book that Tongning had been reading and asked curiously, "What are you reading?" Tongning closed the book and replied, "I'm reading the history of the film industry and analyzing a few cases. That's not all of your lessons." "The lessons are too basic. They can't satisfy my needs," Tongning replied. "Although, I've heard that systematic learning is useless. The real knowledge can be found on the set of a film. The basic theories aren't challenging at all. Can't you be satisfied already?" Ting laughed. "It seems, what you need is a professional team, not a rubbish place full of discrimination. Mr. Did you just find out? But, I didn't lose out by coming here. At least, I now know what these Westerners think of Asians. This has made me even more determined to produce good films. Especially sci-fi films. It seems, I have no choice but to find you the best team." Ting laughed. "In that case, we'll have to go to the US. I originally thought you would at least last for a month." Chapter 1009. So from the next day onwards, Han Xiucha did not see Tongning at school. He asked the school why Tongning didn't attend classes, but he later found out that Tongning dropped out of her own accord. Tongning dropped out of school. Han Xiucha never expected Tongning's thoughts to change so much. If she knew things would turn out like this, she wouldn't have acted like she wanted to fight against the entire world. But it made sense. Back in Beijing, she already couldn't handle public opinion. Even overseas, she was still the same. She was still afraid. So she hid. Han Xiucha suddenly felt a little angry. Was the woman that he had been paying attention to for so long actually someone like this? No, he didn't want to believe it, but it was the truth that Tongning had left England. Han Xiucha was disappointed. How did the legendary Tongning turn out like this? No, that's not right, Han Xiucha felt insulted. Did you guys know that the bitch from China dropped out of her own accord? Asians are cowards. Her reputation is so bad. If I was her, I wouldn't be able to stay here either. Hearing the discussions around him, Han Xiucha threw away the documents in his hands, booked the earliest flight and rushed back to Beijing. As soon as Han Xiucha returned to Beijing, he asked his manager, "Has Tongning returned to Beijing?" "I haven't heard," the manager replied. "Then she must be hiding." Han Xiucha was furious. He suddenly felt like his mental state had been a waste. But, at this time, a commercial featuring a replica of Tongning was playing on the television. As soon as Han Xiucha saw it, his interest was piqued. "I want this woman's contact details." Han Xiucha, are you serious? Just because you can't catch up to Tongning, you're going to look for a defective product? You don't understand. I looked for this woman because I wanted to prove that Tongning is nothing special. The manager was confused by Han Xiucha's thoughts. Previously, he was so interested in Tongning, but now, he hated her to the bone. What was he thinking? Xiucha, I think you should see a psychologist. I know what I'm doing, Han Xiucha waved his hand calmly. Just do as I say. The woman that he had been paying attention to for so long turned out to be nothing more than a golden lint. Of course, he would fly into a rage out of humiliation. It was as if he had found a delicious piece of chocolate, but when he ate it, he realized that it was just a pile of shit. This was equivalent to admitting that he was stupid. Tongning is simply a coward. If it wasn't for Mo Ting, she would be nothing. Meanwhile in the US, Tongning had no idea that she had accidentally provoked someone. After all, she didn't care about Han Xiucha at all. After the couple brought Yan heir to America, they immediately moved into the manor. Meanwhile, Mo Ting arranged for her to meet with a famous director that Hai Rui would be working with as soon as possible. To avoid attracting attention from the media, the couple kept a lower profile compared to when they were in England. To avoid being recognized, Tongning disguised herself every day. Afterwards, Tongning and Nzaheo spoke on the phone. After Nzaheo understood her intentions, he laughed that she should have contacted him earlier so he could introduce her to a good sci-fi director. You're too demanding on yourself. Why do you have to personally understand every aspect of film production? If I don't have any demands on myself, would you watch the things that I produce? That's enough, I can't win against you in an argument. Since President Mo has already made arrangements, you should focus on studying, and Nzaheo smiled. Even without you around, Beijing is still causing quite a bit of news. Plus, I can tell that superstar media is struggling while you're gone. Are you really going to sit back and do nothing? Since I've already handed superstar media to Long Jie, how am I going to treat her when I get involved? If it's convenient for you, you can stay by my side and give her some pointers. I don't need you to tell me that. And Nzaheo sighed before he said, without you around, the entertainment industry has become a lot more boring. Is it because there's no news that can entertain me? It's because there are too many bad people out there that need you to come back and suppress them. Tongning smiled and replied with a deeper meaning. I'm simply someone that has been abandoned by the entertainment industry, that's enough. It's been a few years, yet you're still being polite to me? Come back soon, I'm waiting to see the results of the Ant Queen. After speaking, Nzaheo hung up the phone. Meanwhile, Tongning looked helplessly at Mo Ting, who was carrying his daughter. With superstar media's current situation, shouldn't Lu Che help them out in secret? Long Jie has a lot of pride, so I'm sure she doesn't want Lu Che to help her out in the open. But we agreed that superstar media has nothing to do with you anymore, Mo Ting said as he looked at Tongning. Since you've made your decision, you should learn to let go. Long Jie also needs to grow up. After a moment of thought, Tongning nodded her head. That's right, I'll listen to you. In reality, superstar media was currently facing a huge problem. After Tongning left, no matter how hard Long Jie tried, she couldn't create the same explosive news that she did when Tongning was around. Plus, the artists that she recently signed were all like Han Xiucha. They either didn't care about their development or were useless. Am I useless? Long Jie asked the pregnant Lin Qian. Why is it that when Tongning is doing the same thing, it's not the same for me? Lin Qian patted Long Jie on the shoulder and comforted. You're putting too much pressure on yourself. You've already done enough. Is Long Jie so troubled because I'm disobedient? After arriving at Superstar Media, Han Xiucha didn't see Long Jie in his office, so he guessed that she was enjoying the scenery from the balcony. But he never expected that Lin Qian would also be there. I haven't asked you yet. Why did you go to England? I went to see Tongning, Han Xiucha shrugged. But I returned after she left the university. Who told her to be so famous that I missed her in the past? Since you're back, you should focus on your development and stop messing around. Speaking of which, I have a suggestion. Since Tongning is no longer a part of Superstar Media, if we want to maintain the popularity of Superstar Media, I think we can find the fake Tongning. Think about it, if you sign this artist. After hearing this, Long Jie shook her head. Don't mention the fake Tongning in front of me. No matter how much she imitates, she's still not Tongning. After speaking, Long Jie turned around and returned to her office. Meanwhile, Lin Qian looked at Han Xiucha with a questioning gaze. Because, when Long Jie first signed this person, she already had a lot of doubts. Chapter 10:10. Don't let me find out what you've been up to at Superstar Media. Lin Qian warned Han Xiucha. Han Xiucha shrugged his shoulders innocently and did not say another word before he turned and left. From his point of view, without Tongning, Superstar Media was nothing more than a paper tiger. Destroying it would be a piece of cake. Since he had misjudged Tongning, he decided to mess around with Superstar Media. It would be a good way to vent his anger. Most importantly, controlling Superstar Media was good for his own promotion. He didn't want to be the one being tied down. What warning! He didn't even care about his brother, let alone a mere manager. Should he try to get to know the fake Tongning? That would be interesting. Tongning, let's see if you can hide to the ends of the earth. If you don't show yourself, I'm going to make you show yourself. Tongning had no idea what was happening in Beijing. It wasn't easy for her to meet with the famous American sci-fi director, the legendary father of sci-fi. After understanding Tongning's intentions, the man in his early 60s felt her thoughts were ridiculous. It's not easy to produce a good sci-fi film, especially since the East is so far away from it. That's not a problem. Tongning replied straightforwardly. In that case, what do you think is the biggest problem? Director Jones asked. You're afraid that I'll surpass my master. After hearing this, Jones burst into laughter. You sure have an interesting way of talking. It's not that I'm biased against Eastern culture, but I'm getting old and about to retire. I want to spend more time on my family. So, I'm sorry, Mrs. Mo. In reality, Tongning could tell that Jones wasn't as narrow-minded and mean as the professors in the UK. From the look in his eyes, he didn't look down on others at all. Anyone that could be considered a great person was usually broad-minded and easy to get along with. In reality, Tongning had already expected this response. But it wasn't easy to get the approval of a master like him, especially since she was rude to begin with. In the end, the three of them only had one dinner together. Soon, Director Jones' phone alarm rang and he hurriedly left the dinner. Don't be discouraged. If worse comes to worst, we'll just try a few more times. It took a lot of effort for you to convince Qiao Sen to come out of seclusion. Tongning turned to look at Mo Ting and nodded her head. I'm not someone who gives up so easily. Let's go, we'll talk about it next time. After that, they paid the bill and walked out of the hotel. Since we're not far from the manor, why don't we walk home? Mo Ting suggested. Fortunately, Aunt Yun is here too. Don't worry about Yen. Let's go. Tongning nodded her head. The couple held hands as they walked through the streets of the U.S. However, at this time, a middle-aged woman suddenly bumped into them from behind. Tongning and Mo Ting immediately turned around to find the woman lying on the ground. Tongning immediately knelt down to help her up, but Mo Ting said to her, "Don't touch her for now. Hurry and call the U.S. ambulance." Tongning nodded. Although it was troublesome, Tongning patiently found someone to ask for help. Soon, the woman was sent to the hospital. Afterwards, the woman woke up in the ambulance. But the first thing she did after waking up was question her husband. The paramedics told the woman that Tongning and Mo Ting had saved her. So, she immediately asked the nurse to grab her phone from her pocket and give her husband a phone call. After arriving at the hospital, Tongning and Mo Ting decided to head straight home since the woman had someone to take care of her. Don't go, I haven't thanked you yet. My husband is a famous director. He can give you a reward. Hearing the word director, a possibility flashed across Tongning's mind. But she did not stop in her tracks. Let's go home. Aren't you going to take advantage of such a good opportunity? Mo Ting asked as they left. Like you said, I'm just using you, Tongning disagreed. I don't like to force people. I can't do anything about you. Mo Ting patted Tongning on the head and escorted her away. Soon, Jones received a call and rushed to the hospital. However, he did not see Mo Ting and Tongning. Luckily you're okay. The people that saved me were an Asian couple, the woman told Jones. But when I told them to stay and wait for your reward, they directly left. What a shame. After hearing from his wife, Jones had a rough idea of who the Asian couple were. How could it be them? Do you know them? Yes, I met them tonight. But since they saved you, I'm sure they know who you are and will come looking for me. He didn't believe that Tongning would miss out on such a good opportunity. After all, this was his wife's savior. It was supposed to be a simple matter, but because they had met before, Jones had a misunderstanding. If you see them, you need to thank them properly. Okay, I will. Jones nodded his head in agreement. But, after waiting for a good few days, Tongning and Mo Ting still hadn't shown up. Could it be that they still hadn't decided how big of a request they were going to make? In reality, to avoid suspicion, Tongning had already decided to look for another director. She knew that if she took the initiative to look for Jones under these circumstances, he would definitely feel uncomfortable. Think about it carefully. Other directors may not be as easy to talk to as Jones. What else can I do? Tongning shrugged helplessly. No matter how difficult it is, I still need to give it a try. So, Mo Ting and Tongning tried to contact other famous directors and look for influential figures in the sci-fi industry. However, this matter quickly spread to Jones's ears. This young woman sure has a stubborn temper. So Jones gave his assistant a phone call and asked him to contact Tongning. Tongning never expected that Jones would contact her. As the two men spoke on the phone, Jones looked at them helplessly. I feel like I should apologize for misunderstanding the two of you. Plus, I feel like I need to repay you for saving my wife. So, I'm willing to teach you. Director Jones, although I'm happy to receive your phone call, saving your wife was just a coincidence. I didn't. I now know that you guys aren't that kind of people. That's why I'm willing to be your teacher. Isn't that what you Chinese call me? Are you saying? I'm saying that you should come and look for me tomorrow. I am about to direct my last sci-fi film, The Resurrected Specimen. So, I can take you with me. Consider it your luck. I think this is fate. But, you need to be prepared. It's going to be tough. I won't treat you well just because you are a woman. Chapter 10-11. Don't worry, I can take hardships, Tongning replied. It's up to me to decide whether you can endure hardships or not. However, there's a saying in the East called last disciple. At my age, it's a trend. I hope you can live up to my expectations. After speaking, Director Jones hung up the phone. Afterwards, Tongning looked at Mo Ting with a smile. Success. Mo Ting nodded his head and placed a kiss on her forehead. From now on, you need to work even harder. I know. As a result, after Tongning went to the US, she once again went missing. But no one expected, this time, she became the disciple of a world-class director. As there was no news of Tongning, there were many different versions of the story. The main one was that Tongning couldn't survive anywhere. She was chased out in Beijing and ostracized in England. Where else could she go? She was now nothing but a rat on the street. No one expected that she had already risen to the top of the world, all because she wanted to produce a sci-fi film. While she was the disciple of Director Jones, she didn't care about her image at all. In order not to be recognized, she wore a hat and glasses all day long and accepted any job she did. Mo Ting continued to fly around the world. However, even Long Jie and the others had no idea about Tongning. Lu Che tried to ask Mo Ting about it, but Mo Ting simply replied, "Why are you asking so many questions?" "It's because the rumors about the madam are too bad," Lu Che explained. Actually, this was exactly what Long Jie wanted to know. But, how could he hide his thoughts from President Mo? Take care of yourself. When you have time, visit Superstar Media more often. Mo Ting thought he had already hinted enough. If Lu Che couldn't even understand this, then he wasn't fit to be Mo Ting's assistant. I understand. Lu Che understood immediately. In reality, he had wanted to help his wife for a long time, but he never received Mo Ting's permission. But now, even with Mo Ting's permission, he couldn't do it in the open because it would hurt Long Jie's pride. News of Tongning's incident spread like wildfire in Beijing. But, even so, Tongning had no intention of explaining herself. This made Han Xiucha even more certain that Tongning didn't live up to her reputation. I'd like to see if a coward like you would show up if something happens to Superstar Media. Young Master Han, I've already contacted the fake Ma Weiwei. When will you be meeting with her? Han Zhouli's manager asked unwillingly. The sooner the better. I really want to know how Tongning would feel if Superstar Media fell into the hands of the fake Tongning. A few days ago, he was so worried about her. Now, he's trying to deal with her. It's hard to guess what a man is thinking, the manager mumbled before he grabbed his phone and left the apartment. She felt like she couldn't take it anymore. Who wouldn't fall sick when faced with such a sensitive artist? But before that, she still had to do her job well. The manager arranged for the two to meet at a secluded place. After all, they were both artists, so it was inconvenient for them to meet. Originally, she didn't think the fake Ma Weiwei would appear. But, as soon as she heard Tongning's name, she still showed up. After all, Ma Weiwei relied on Tongning to get to where she was today. But, this was like a double-edged sword. Although Ma Weiwei was famous and popular, the main character, Tongning, was still a thorn in her heart. Of course, she wanted to replace Tongning. She didn't want to continue being a fake. The two met in the car, while the manager stood outside the woods as a lookout. "Speak, why did you ask me to meet you?" The great cartoonist Han Xiucha looked at the face that resembled Tongning and smiled. "Are you interested in taking over Superstar Media? You should know that Superstar Media is Tongning's blood and sweat. If you can take over Superstar Media, the topic will definitely explode." After hearing Han Xiucha's words, Ma Weiwei smiled with a hint of ridicule. "Are you trying to betray your agency? Simply tell me if you're interested." "I don't want to discuss anything else," Han Xiucha replied straightforwardly. "Right now, all you can do is rely on the fact that you have a face similar to Tongning's. You may be famous at the moment, but you don't have anything to show for it. So, your foundation isn't stable and you could become an abandoned chess piece at any time. Think about it, if we work together and take over Superstar Media, the situation will be different." "How are we supposed to take over Superstar Media?" Ma Weiwei asked. "Don't forget, Tongning may not be in charge of Superstar Media anymore, but Longman isn't easy to deal with either. Plus, her husband is the assistant of the CEO of Hai Rue. Longman isn't hard to deal with," Han Xiucha said confidently. "As for you, you don't need to do anything. I will hand Superstar Media over to you. You just need to remember, if you have any benefits in the future, think of me first." Ma Weiwei treated Han Xiucha like a lunatic. "Okay, if you really hand Superstar Media over to me, I would be more than happy." After all, she never expected Han Xiucha to succeed. So, her meeting with Han Xiucha today was merely a way to get some fresh air. After all, she did covet the fame and status that Tongning once had. But, Superstar Media, she didn't dare to think about it. No one could become a fatty in one go. She, Ma Weiwei, was bound to be more dazzling than Tongning one day. After their conversation, Ma Weiwei left first. At this time, her manager asked Han Xiucha, "What deal did you make with Ma Weiwei?" "You simply made a new friend. Why are you in such a rush?" Ma Weiwei's manager took a deep breath. She felt that Han Xiucha was becoming more and more unreasonable. "Wouldn't it be great if you put all your energy into drawing comics?" "You don't understand," Han Xiucha said as he chewed on a piece of gum. "I love seeing Tongning fight back, but at the same time, act like a coward. If Superstar Media is taken away, guess what expression she'll have on her face?" "I don't understand. All I know is, if you truly like Tongning, then everything you've done today is hurting her. You're becoming more and more annoying." Han Xiucha completely ignored his manager's advice. "I can do whatever I want. Even my brother can't control me, let alone you. Just wait and watch a good show." Ma Weiwei's manager had no choice but to pretend that she didn't know anything. To be exact, she hoped that Tongning would appear as soon as possible and teach this spoilt heir a lesson, even though she was his manager. Chapter 10-12. Meanwhile, Tongning had been on set with Director Jones for an entire month. At times, she would return home with burns all over her body. Although Mo Ting's heart ached, he was happy for Tongning when he saw that she was doing well. Because of Tongning's needs, the post-production of The Ant Queen was secretly moved to the US. After all, Tongning had improved a lot, especially with the guidance and support of the father of sci-fi. While she was studying with Director Jones, a lot of big-name companies approached Director Jones to invite him to participate in the production of a sci-fi film in Beijing. But he rejected every single one of them. Some agencies even went through a lot of trouble to get their hands on the set of The Specimen, just so Director Jones could spare some time for them. But Jones simply ignored them. Of course, some people also noticed the tall woman beside Jones. Although she was wearing a hat and sunglasses, her superstar aura made it easy for people to recognize her. But no one knew what was going on, so no one expected that Tongning was actually Director Jones's apprentice. They could only guess that Tongning was doing odd jobs on set because that was her daily job. Afterwards, these people returned to Beijing and began to spread rumors to the media that they had seen Tongning on set, and that she was now working for the Americans as the most humiliated odd job worker in the industry. She had become the lowest rung in the industry. Yet, Hai Rui ignored them. Could it be that Mo Ting had completely given up on Tongning? Look at Tongning's tattered clothes. She must have already been dumped by Mo Ting. They simply haven't announced their divorce yet. Did a superstar like her ruin her life just like that? That must be the case. Hai Rui doesn't want to talk about Tongning at all. How is this how they treat their own wife? As a result, rumors about Tongning's change in marriage began to spread like wildfire. Long Jie was extremely worried about the rumors. So when she returned home that night, she lost her temper at her husband. Can't you find out anything from President Mo? It's fine that Tongning isn't contacting us, but did something really happen to her? The president told me not to ask anything, so I didn't dare to be a busybody, Lu Che replied. But, do you believe that the president has a change of heart towards the madam? It's not a matter of whether I believe it or not. Rumors are everywhere, so I have no choice but to believe it. I think that since the president didn't allow me to ask, madam is fine. She's fine my ass. What if Tongning gets bullied and we all think she's fine? Long Jie scoffed. How can you be so sure about men? Don't be so suspicious. How about this? I'll go ask around and see if I can get any information. Lu Che comforted his wife and prepared to use his own methods. But Tongning's relationship with Director Jones was extremely low profile, so no one knew about it. As a result, Lu Che could only return in low spirits. How I wish Madam could come back now. Lu Che wasn't the only one who noticed how anxious Long Jie was. Even Han Xiuqia noticed. If President Long is worried about Tongning, you can go to the US to look for her. There is no need to sit here and worry. You think I don't want to? But superstar media needs someone to support it. Now that she had heard so many rumors about Tongning, she was extremely anxious. How could she still be in the mood to help a newcomer? Don't worry. Superstar media still has us. Han Xiuqia said with a deeper meaning. Long Jie waved her hand. Her heart was filled with worry and complicated emotions. But this time, Mo Ting had passed on Long Jie's worries, so Tongning decided to help her calm down. So after a busy day, she gave Long Jie a phone call. I heard you're so worried about me that you're getting angry. You still remember to give me a phone call? Do you know how bad the rumors in Beijing are? They've even started to talk about you and the president's divorce. Do you believe them? Tongning raised an eyebrow. Don't worry, I'm doing well. You simply need to believe in me. Are you sure? What do you mean by running errands for an American? It's just a rumor that someone from Beijing came to look for a master to direct a film and accidentally saw it. I am indeed running errands, but I'm not that errands. You just need to know that, master? I've been accepted by Director Jones as my master. I'm currently learning how to produce sci-fi films, Tongning replied. Are you referring to the father of sci-fi Jones? Aha, Tongning nodded. After hearing this, Long Jie suddenly became excited. Ha ha ha, I knew you wouldn't be Tongning if you didn't stir up some trouble. I never expected you to be accepted by a master without a word. Quick, tell me about your adventure in the US. I don't have time to talk to you. Either way, you need to trust me. I will be back very soon. But you can't tell anyone that I'm Director Jones' apprentice, not even Lu Che. Maintain a sense of mystery. That way, we'll have a good show to watch in the future. Long Jie was so excited that she started kicking her legs. Okay, I understand. I promise I won't tell anyone, not even Lu Che or Lin Qian. I'll focus on waiting for your return. Since you're reassured, focus on managing superstar media's artists. Tongning instructed. Even if I'm not around, you can't let anyone take advantage of you. Understood. Since she was able to talk to Tongning, the stone in her heart naturally fell off. Not only was Tongning not as pitiful as the rumors said, she had also become a master's disciple. Just this identity alone was enough to blind people's eyes. She was simply waiting for Tongning's return. As a result, Long Jie's attitude towards superstar media changed. This made Han Xiucha a little suspicious. Long Jie, are you no longer worried about Tongning? Why have you been so focused on work these past few days? Long Jie lifted her head and looked at Han Xiucha. She then replied, it's because I've thought it through. Whatever Tongning does on the outside is her choice and I have no right to interfere. Since I've taken over Superstar Media, I have a responsibility to continue developing it. So, I've decided to focus on training all of you to become superstars. I thought you contacted Tongning and she was coming back. I knew it, with all the bad rumors about her, she wouldn't want to show her face. Just ignore the news. Let's not talk about Tongning. How long have you been preparing for your new comic? Is it ready? Long Jie asked. I'm looking forward to it. In that case, keep looking forward to it. It's going to be spectacular. Han Xiucha replied. As for how spectacular it was, Long Jie was waiting to see. It was definitely going to surprise her. Chapter 10-13. As she was pregnant, Lin Qian didn't spend as much time at the agency. But, as a pregnant woman, her intuition told her that something wasn't quite right with Han Xiucha. I saw Han Xiucha leave your office a moment ago. You should keep an eye out for him, Lin Qian reminded. Lin Qian reminded. Disappearing for no reason, going to England to see Tongning and now reappearing out of the blue. This is suspicious in itself. Long Jie thought for a moment and nodded her head. I haven't had anyone to talk to lately, so I chatted with him a bit more. I know you're having a hard time. I wonder how Tongning is doing. Speaking of which, Han Xiucha even suggested that I sign the fake Tongning, Ma Weiwei, to the agency. He said she would be a hit. When you first signed her, I already felt there was a problem. Now it seems I was right, Lin Qian said. Now that Hong Jie is making a name for herself in the fashion industry and Xinglan and Luo Shang are both at High Rue, you need to sign a new artist to keep Han Xiucha in check. I will find a suitable artist. You should take care of your health. If anything happens, I won't be able to take responsibility. After hearing Long Jie's advice, Lin Qian nodded her head. Don't force yourself. If anything happens, discuss it with me. Okay. Long Jie finally relaxed as she escorted Lin Qian out of the agency and watched as she boarded her car home. Now that Superstar Media no longer had Tongning and Ma Weiwei was constantly suppressing them, Long Jie felt so much pressure that she couldn't breathe. At this moment, in the break room before filming, Ma Weiwei was putting on her makeup while her manager sat beside her and fiddled with her phone. Hey, Weiwei, Han Xiucha hasn't been around for so long. Don't tell me he's just messing with you. Are you talking about giving Superstar Media to me? Ma Weiwei humphed. Even if Superstar Media was given to me, I wouldn't necessarily want it. Look at Long Man's abilities after Tongning left. She's a little smart, but she's not talented. She needs someone to guide her for her to produce results. But, who would want to join Superstar Media? If others don't want it, that's fine. After all, there's no blessing. But you're different. It's because of your relationship with Tongning that you need Superstar Media. Sooner or later, you're going to step on top of Superstar Media. After hearing her manager's words, Ma Weiwei put down the mascara in her hand and fell into deep thought. Tongning is currently in the US and is hiding from everyone. Even if I take Superstar Media from her, I won't feel much joy. Yes, she's not in the country right now, but she's bound to return one day. The manager was very interested in acquiring Superstar Media. Why don't I ask young Master Han? You can go if you want. Ma Weiwei did not object. After her makeup was done, she sat down quietly and waited. But, Luo Yinghong's fashion show was taking place in the studio next door, and Ma Weiwei's waiting room was only one wall away. Ma Weiwei had no idea that Luo Yinghong had just stepped out from next door when the staff arrived to notify her. Sister Hong, I've heard so much about you. Why don't you have an assistant with you? Ma Weiwei asked, even though she already knew the answer. Because I don't need one, Luo Yinghong replied with a smile. You, on the other hand, need to hire a few more. After all, you're following in Tongning's footsteps and making a lot of enemies. I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it. Ma Weiwei's face turned red. Hong Jie, I respect that you are my senior, But I heard your conversation with your manager. Unfortunately, your waiting room isn't soundproof, Luo Yinghong sneered. Luo Yinghong sneered. Although Tongning has indeed gone overseas, don't you think you're dreaming if you think you can surpass her? She's merely an artist that's past her prime. Why are you in such a rush to protect her? Could it be that you don't know what "times have changed" means? Seeing this, the manager immediately shielded Ma Weiwei behind her as she stepped forward. I'm afraid Tongning isn't even fit to carry our Weiwei's shoes. Hearing this, Luo Yinghong approached Ma Weiwei and tugged on her sleeve. Didn't you become famous because you had plastic surgery that looked like Tongning's? Although you want to deny it, don't you know how many benefits you've received because of this face? No matter how popular you are right now, you can't get rid of the label that you relied on Tongning to get to where you are today. That's why, even if Tongning is past her prime, everyone else has the right to look down on her, but you don't. As she spoke, Luo Yinghong nudged Ma Weiwei. Remember what I said today. Don't go overboard. Ma Weiwei clenched her fists. Obviously, she had reached her limit. After all, Luo Yinghong's every word was stepping on her wounds, so it was impossible for her not to be angry. Afterwards, Luo Yinghong left, but Ma Weiwei said to her manager, "Why aren't you going to ask Han Xiuqia when he's going to take over Superstar Media?" "Weiwei, don't be angry. I'll go right now." Ma Weiwei's manager immediately agreed. After hearing Luo Yinghong's words, Ma Weiwei felt like someone had grabbed onto her tail as her hair stood on end. "Old geezer, I will definitely show you. Who cares about Tongning? In the end, everyone in Beijing will only recognize me, Ma Weiwei. Just wait and see." As a result, when Han Xiuqia received a phone call from Ma Weiwei's manager, he was a little surprised. "I thought Weiwei didn't care at all." "She didn't care in the past, but now, she's being humiliated by an artist from Superstar Media," the manager replied. "So, young Master Han, how are you going to deal with this matter and when are you going to do it? Give me a definite answer. Very soon. Wait for my good news." In that case, hurry up. He wasn't in a rush before, but now, he was burning with impatience. After all, he had tasted the taste of power and understood the pain of being suppressed. In the past, he had always been on guard against Lin Qian because she was a very perceptive person. So he decided to wait until Lin Qian was older and Long Jie was truly alone and helpless. He knew that Lin Qian had a problem with him, but he didn't want to provoke the wife of a government official. Li Jin wasn't someone to be trifled with. So, he waited for the right time. Now that Lin Qian was spending less and less time at the agency, her conversations with Long Jie also decreased. He was certain that it wouldn't be long before Long Jie broke down. The more she wanted to achieve something, the harder it was for her to achieve anything. Long Jie was currently looking everywhere for a suitable artist to sign with. But without Tongning, who would be willing to do it? Superstar Media's glory days were already over. So, he took the initiative to suggest to Long Jie, "Long Jie, I know you've been working on a plan to create a star. I know a few newcomers. Why don't I introduce them to you?" Chapter 10:14. What kind of newcomers? Long Jie asked. "You should know that I have very high standards. You'll know when you meet them." Han Xiuqia deliberately kept Long Jie in suspense, but he still gave Long Jie a glimmer of hope. Long Jie knew that Lin Qian had warned her, but she had no other choice. As long as it could help Superstar Media live a little better, she would do her best. "In that case, let's meet them." "Okay." Han Xiuqia was overly enthusiastic about this matter, so Long Jie was wary of him. But she couldn't resist his temptation. So Long Jie did not discuss this matter with Lin Qian because Lin Qian's pregnancy was starting to show, so she didn't need to worry too much. A few days later, Han Xiuqia arrived at Superstar Media with a few newcomers. When Long Jie saw them and noticed that they were a group, she was a little tempted. Plus, their appearance, aura and background were all good. So Long Jie predicted that as long as they were packaged properly, they would definitely be a hit. "What do you think? Are you satisfied?" Han Xiuqia smiled. "My juniors from the art school are all good, so I introduced them to Superstar Media." "That's true." Long Jie nodded. "I'm counting on them to make me proud." "Don't worry, They're really outstanding. After all, Han Xiucha wasn't the only one who could decide whether they were outstanding or not. Long Jie had her own methods and her own channels, so it wasn't hard for her to understand certain things. Luckily, the newcomers all had clean backgrounds. Thank you for helping me out this time. Long Jie thanked Han Xiucha. We're all from Superstar Media, there's no need to be so polite. Han Xiucha was extremely generous, but the smile on his face after he turned around had a deeper meaning. I'll personally take care of these people. I believe in your abilities. The reason why Long Jie wanted to guide them personally was because she had her doubts. Plus, it would be difficult to supervise them. Therefore, after signing these people, she needed to train them. However, she never expected that this would be the beginning of her misfortune. During her time on the set of The Specimen, Tongning learned a lot. Meanwhile, Jones was extremely meticulous. He knew that Tongning was talented in this area, so he couldn't wait to pass on everything he knew to her so she could be successful in sci-fi. So gradually, the crew began to realize that Tongning wasn't just an errand boy, she was actually Jones' disciple. And most of them had criticized this person who did odd jobs all day long. Now that he thought about it, he felt a chill run down his spine. Most importantly, Tongning witnessed the professionalism of Western actors. Indeed, for the sake of their roles, they were willing to put on weight, lose weight, be sloppy and struggle at will. This was something that the Eastern entertainment industry lacked. Tongning, I've interacted with plenty of Asians in the past. Regardless of whether they're from this industry or not, it's rare to find someone as hardworking and humble as you. After all, Asians love to keep up appearances. This was what the producer of The Specimen said to Tongning during a visit on set. So, after seeing how hard you work every day to learn how to film and how you even have to make a cameo appearance, I really want to ask you, do you want to come to Hollywood to develop your career? I've heard about what happened to you in the East and I don't think you deserve the treatment you've received. I've also seen the films you've appeared in. To be honest, I think it's a shame that you chose to film instead of acting. So, even though I know you may not agree, I still want to ask you, do you want to come to Hollywood and act in one of our roles? Originally, I was going to head to the East this weekend to recruit actors. If you're willing, I think I can skip this trip. After hearing this, Tongning smiled and said apologetically, I'm sorry, I swear I won't act again. I will definitely keep my promise. Plus, the reason why I put so much effort into learning how to film a sci-fi film was because I wanted to fulfill a deceased friend's wish. So, I'm sorry. I think I'll have to reject your invitation. After hearing Tongning's answer, the man nodded his head in despair. Okay, it seems I'll have to make a trip to the East. I wish you all the best. The man did not force Tongning. He felt that she had character and was persistent. So, he felt that Tongning deserved to be respected. But, he couldn't understand why a talent like Tongning would suffer so much in the East. Soon, the producer arrived in Beijing. As he stepped out of the airport, he saw another advertisement about Ma Weiwei. He was in disbelief that this female artist looked so similar to Tongning. As he had a good impression of Tongning, he asked his assistant to investigate Ma Weiwei's background. But after finding out, he was disappointed. Sir, Ma Weiwei had plastic surgery based on Miss Tang's face and made a name for herself. In that case, she's simply a thief that stole the fruits of someone else's labor. Since that's the case, why don't we hold an open audition? What do you think? Okay, the producer nodded his head. What if Madame Ma Weiwei is also here? In that case, let's wait and see what the difference between her and Tongning is, the producer replied. By the way, don't let anyone know that Tongning is learning from Director Jones. I don't think anyone in Beijing knows about this. Don't be a gossipy woman. Let's keep this between ourselves. I was originally planning on contacting Tongning, so don't do anything annoying. I understand, sir. Tongning didn't ask the producer to do this, but she received the respect that she deserved. To be exact, it was because she was Joan's student that she received this treatment. Indeed, a top-notch foreign producer recruiting actors to develop in Hollywood was indeed attractive enough. Ma Weiwei, as a rising star, naturally desired this opportunity as well. So, she asked her agency to help her out. But, if she was to find out how much the producer admired Tongning, would she slap herself in the face? Up until now, She had never acted in a leading role because she had no acting skills. Even if she were to go back and redo herself 10 times, she would never be able to mimic Tongning. Chapter 10-15. Wei Wei, the agency has notified me that you've received an audition. After Ma Weiwei's manager contacted the American producer, she excitedly told her about the audition. She knew that even though Ma Weiwei was currently a hot topic, she couldn't compare to the professional Tongning. So, she never expected that Ma Weiwei would actually get a chance to audition for the role. That's because I'm luckier than Tongning, Ma Weiwei replied calmly. Ma Weiwei replied calmly, just you wait and see. I won't be like Tongning and fail miserably at everything she does. Of course, our Weiwei is very powerful. Plastic surgery and hype were indeed amazing. But, Ma Weiwei had no idea that the reason she received the audition was because the American producer wanted to see how bad she was compared to Tongning. At this time, Long Jie was training her newly signed group, S.J. The group consisted of 2 men and 2 women. It was a perfect balance and they all had good voices. Of course, this new group couldn't participate in a talent show like Xing Lan. So, their only way to debut was through Long Jie's series of exposure plans. So, Long Jie was currently giving them a strict training regime. From the way they dressed to the way they spoke to their characters, she had to design everything. Seeing that Long Jie was immersed in her new plan, Han Xiucha was extremely satisfied. This meant he was one step closer to achieving his plan. Of course, Lin Qian heard about such a big matter. Seeing how hard Long Jie was working, she felt guilty for not being able to help. So far, this group is performing well. So, in 2 to 3 months' time, they will debut and you will be about to give birth. When you return, we can start our other plans. So, don't worry. Even if Tongning isn't around, I will still do my best to make superstar media shine. Lin Qian held onto her stomach and smiled. I have no doubt that you're more capable than me. But, there's one thing you need to be aware of. Be cautious of Han Xiucha. I don't have a good impression of him. Han Xiucha helped us a lot this time. Long Jie replied honestly. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. That's good. But, Long Jie never imagined that Han Xiucha would dig such a big hole for her to jump into. He didn't care about the cost of time or the consequences. So, how could she guard against it? Not only did she not have her guard up against Han Xiucha, but she also spent more and more time with him when Lin Qian wasn't around. After returning to the agency, Luo Yinghong heard that Long Jie and Han Xiucha were close. So, she thought about the conversation she overheard between Ma Weiwei and her manager. She had a lot of suspicions about Han Xiucha. As an artist of the agency, she felt it was necessary for her to remind Long Jie. So, she waited until Han Xiucha wasn't around to knock on Long Jie's office door. Sister Hong? What's the matter? I noticed that you've been quite close to Han Xiucha recently, so I wanted to tell you to be careful of him. Previously, when I was filming a show, I bumped into Ma Weiwei and overheard her conversation with her manager. It seems, her relationship with Han Xiucha isn't simple. After hearing this, Long Jie froze. Really? I have no feud with Han Xiucha, so there's no reason for me to wrongly accuse him. Either way, you can't go wrong by keeping an eye on him. This was a friendly reminder, so Long Jie naturally took note of it. So she nodded her head. Don't worry, Hong Jie, I know what to do. That's good. After speaking, Luo Yinghong left Long Jie's office. Meanwhile, not too far away, Han Xiucha was excitedly looking for Long Jie to discuss something with her. Hong Jie, such a polite man, who looked completely harmless. No one would have expected that he was actually harboring evil intentions. After all, Luo Yinghong did not have a good impression of him. So, she simply nodded her head calmly at Han Xiucha's enthusiasm. At this time, Han Xiucha seemed to have realized that apart from Long Jie, everyone else at Superstar Media was on guard against him. But so what? After all, Long Jie was already in his trap. A few days later, it was time for the American producer's audition. Ma Weiwei was dressed to the nines and appeared in a press release. It seemed, she was about to be chosen by the producer. But, it was obvious that no one in the industry cared about her. Even if Tongning appeared in person, she might not be able to succeed, let alone this fake. Apart from using Tongning to advance, what else could she do? Act. How could she? In this world, not everyone was as talented as Tongning. Ma Weiwei was well aware of her current status. But, if she looked down on herself, who would give her the respect that she wanted? What was even stranger was the fact that Ma Weiwei was placed in the first position for the audition. The producer's motive was simple. He wanted her to see if she could do it. If she couldn't, he would simply dismiss her. Otherwise, he would continue to hold on to his expectations and be unfair to the other actors. Weiwei, you can definitely do it. Go ahead. Ma Weiwei's manager encouraged. But, everyone knew that Ma Weiwei didn't have any acting skills. Ma Weiwei saw through everyone's underestimation. But, she still felt that if Tongning could do it, she could too. So, as soon as she entered the audition, she was confident. She exuded the aura of a superstar, and from a few angles, she actually resembled Tongning. But as soon as she entered the audition room, the producer could tell that she was merely a shell of Tongning. Let's begin, the producer said in fluent English. The producer said in fluent English, play the role that you think you're best at, or play the scene. A few of the accompanying staff were looking forward to it very much. After all, they had all witnessed Tongning's amazing acting skills. But, Ma Weiwei, she was indeed smart. She knew how to use crying and hysterical scenes to move the hearts of the audience. However, in the few minutes that she was acting, the producer was completely at a loss. Miss Ma, I'm sorry to tell you that with your acting skills, you don't even have the right to act as a corpse. As I expected, a good imitation is just a good imitation. You don't have a single bit of Tongning's charm. I shouldn't have wasted my time, the producer lowered his head, trying to comfort himself. That's enough. Let's move on to the next one. Ma Weiwei stood there awkwardly. She never expected that she would receive such a merciless blow on her first try. Get out. Do you know how you managed to pass the audition with your acting skills? It's because you resemble Tongning. The producer wanted to give you a chance because of Tongning, but reality has proven that giving you a chance is the biggest insult to Tongning, the staff accompanying the producer told Ma Weiwei. Chapter 10:16. Ma Weiwei opened her mouth to refute, but she didn't forget her identity. If she dared to provoke an American producer in public, she wouldn't be able to survive in the entertainment industry anymore. So, even though she was humiliated like this, she had to endure it. Not only that, when she left the audition room, she had to hold her head high and be as confident and calm as when she first entered. Her manager immediately ran over and asked with a smile, "How did it go?" The other artists around them pricked up their ears as they looked at Ma Weiwei mockingly. They knew that if Ma Weiwei was selected, the American blockbusters would be set back 30 years. But, Ma Weiwei cared about her reputation. The director said I wasn't bad. Not bad. Ma Weiwei didn't even blush or feel her heart palpitate when she lied. After hearing this, her manager's smile became even brighter. I knew you could do it. Weiwei, you are a genius. Haha, did I hear that right? If the producer said that Ma Weiwei wasn't bad, then all of us would be qualified to star in a Hollywood blockbuster. Some of the artists laughed. Ma Weiwei scoffed and left with her manager. After returning downstairs, Ma Weiwei stopped in her tracks and turned to look at her manager. Why did they ask me to audition? Ha! Her manager was surprised. What's wrong? They simply wanted to test me because I look like Tongning. But Ma Weiwei couldn't continue. If word got out, she would definitely be treated as a joke. Forget it. Ma Weiwei's manager was confused. She couldn't understand what Ma Weiwei was trying to say. But, as soon as the news started to spread online, she understood. Video of Ma Weiwei comparing herself to Tongning at her audition. Ma Weiwei's first performance scares off the American producer. Even when Tongning was around, people still tried to cause trouble for her, let alone a fake Ma Weiwei. In this industry, as long as there was a chance to defame you, there would always be someone willing to help. Above all, Ma Weiwei's audition video could be considered a joke. The public was filled with ridicule. Reality has proven that no matter how much she looks like Tongning, she still needs to think twice. She's embarrassed herself in front of the foreigners. Where does Ma Weiwei get her confidence from? I need to watch Tongning's film 10 times to clear my eyes. Speaking of which, ever since Tongning stopped acting, there hasn't been another good film. What a pity. As a result, the fans couldn't help but sigh at how good Tongning was. No matter what she was like off-screen, at least her work was worthy of her identity and the audience. Afterwards, the entertainment news broadcasted an interview with the producer. Some of the reporters mentioned Ma Weiwei's audition and felt that it would be a surprise if she passed the audition. And the producer also expressed his regret for this. I must admit, Miss Ma is very similar to your actress, Tongning. That's why I had my hopes up. But, reality has proven, the reason why Tongning is so great is because of her uniqueness. Her acting and professionalism cannot be imitated. Since you know about Tongning, you should also know that she has announced her retreat from the industry, and that she has been involved in a lot of scandals in Beijing. I think your country has a deep misunderstanding towards Tongning. Before I came here, I sent her an invitation, but unfortunately, she rejected me. As soon as the producer said this, the reporters were shocked. It turned out, there was a story behind this. Tongning had a close relationship with Hollywood, unlike others, like Ma Weiwei, who was so embarrassed that she still fought over it. This was the difference. What Tongning didn't want was exactly what Ma Weiwei wanted. But, no matter how much she wanted it, it was useless. Because of my work, I have had some contact with Tongning. She is a very charming Asian woman. I don't think there's another like her in this world. The producer's high praise for Tongning completely shattered the rumors that she was working in the US. In that case, can you tell us what news Tongning has on her? I'm sure we will find out when she's willing to appear. The producer revealed the news about Tongning at the perfect time. It was enough to keep everyone in suspense. If even such a famous producer rejected her, it seemed the public had a deep misunderstanding towards Tongning in the US. Plus, Tongning is a Beijing citizen. Why are you asking me? The reporters felt a little awkward. After all, when Tongning first announced her retreat from the industry, her relationship with them was like fire and water. Above all, they had no idea what Tongning was doing overseas. Their misunderstanding of her was caused by someone else. In fact, everyone felt that Tongning was just a has-been artist that someone would replace her sooner or later. After a while, who would care about Tongning or Li Ning anymore? No one expected that Tongning's matter would be brought up again. As for Ma Weiwei, she could only treat it as a joke. Perhaps, she also wanted to turn the page. When Ma Weiwei and Han Xiuqia met again, Ma Weiwei took the initiative. Didn't you say you were going to make a move on Superstar Media? Why haven't you done anything yet? Ma Weiwei, do you think everyone at Superstar Media is easy to deal with? You don't put in any effort and simply sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. What right do you have to ask me? Ma Weiwei calmed down and looked at Han Xiuqia. Have you seen the recent news? Do you know how much I've been laughed at? Did you think I wanted to get plastic surgery? Because the agency said it would make me famous. Otherwise, who would want to be a fake Tongning? Don't you think I'm disgusted to have the same face as her? I'm constantly being compared to everyone else. I think you should be more suitable. No one forced you to look like Herge. You did it willingly. Ma Weiwei turned around and glared at Han Xiuqia. That's enough, stop complaining to me. The results will be out soon. Wait for my good news. I have a question. Why do you have to target Tongning and her agency? From what I know, you didn't even know Tongning in the past. To be honest, I was infatuated with her for a period of time. In fact, I was crazily infatuated with her. But she was too fake. I was furious. Han Xiuqia replied. In her past life, Tongning must have dug up 2 of my ancestors' graves. Ma Weiwei laughed in ridicule. Forget it, I'll wait for your good news. However, Tongning didn't necessarily know or remember the 2 that were humiliating themselves. For example, Ma Weiwei. Of course, Tongning knew of her existence. But Ma Weiwei was no threat to her. Her face was just a little disgusting, but it wasn't worth her time or effort. As for the question that everyone in Beijing was concerned about, what was Tongning doing? She was confident that she would soon give them an explosive answer. Chapter 1017. Currently, the most important thing for Long Jie was S.J.'s training. After a series of training sessions, Long Jie felt that everyone in the group was presentable. So, she decided it was time to move on to the next step of the promotional campaign. A new group had no popularity, no fame and nothing at all. If they couldn't even become a topic of conversation, then they would be a complete waste of resources. Above all, she had poured everything she had into this group. Without tonguing around, Superstar Media's capabilities would be questioned. This would put a lot of pressure on Long Jie. But Long Jie did not back down. She used all the resources she had and helped the four girls record a dance video and upload it online. The title of the video was, New Dance King Group. Fight if you're not happy. As the title contained a provocative tone, a lot of people clicked on the video to watch it in ridicule. They wanted to know who had the guts to do this. But, after clicking on the video, the audience's anger was diverted by the handsome men and beautiful women in the video. Plus, the girls were talented, so the effect of the video exceeded everyone's expectations. With the first wave of hype, Long Jie struck while the iron was hot. She bribed a few popular bloggers and used a ridiculing tone to promote the video. Her intention was to ignite the topic of conversation. Even though the result was a fight between fans, it still strengthened the public's impression of S.J. slowly. People started to take notice of the new group and found out that Superstar Media was about to release a super popular dance group. Afterwards, Long Jie focused most of her promotional efforts on the younger generation and students. Her positioning was accurate. Since it was a dance group, they had to be responsible for looking good and acting cool. Slowly, S.J. established his own fan club on campus and had a fixed number of fans following him. After tasting the sweetness in Long Jie's hands, the others were a lot more convinced of Long Jie's abilities. At the same time, there was a strange atmosphere amongst the group. But Long Jie was too busy trying to find resources and events to notice. Seeing how hard Long Jie was working, Xinglan, as a member of Superstar Media, naturally wanted to help Long Jie guide the newcomers. After all, the first stop of her concert tour was going to be Beijing. When that time came, it was reasonable for her to invite S.J. to perform. But Xinglan was currently the queen of Hai Rue and had nothing to do with Superstar Media. At a time like this, Xinglan's manager did not agree with Xinglan's decision. Firstly, Hai Rue still had no idea what Long Jie's new group, S.J., was like. It wasn't easy for Xinglan to get to this point, so she couldn't afford to make any mistakes. So, Xinglan's manager did not agree with Xinglan's suggestion. Long Jie understood Xinglan's manager's concerns. In reality, she had never considered asking anyone at Superstar Media for help, whether it was Luo Shang, Xinglan or Luo Yinghong. Long Jie, I will speak to my manager, but I'm willing to invite S.J. to attend my concert. So, tell S.J. to prepare for it at the end of this month. Over the phone, Xinglan said in seriousness and sincerity, although we are no longer legally related, Superstar Media will always be my home in my heart. So, I'm willing to help you. Plus, I've seen S.J.'s videos and I'm sure they are talented. After careful consideration, Long Jie decided to ask Xinglan to guide them. That way, she would be able to avoid a lot of detours. But because of this, she didn't want to do it. You are currently Hai Rue's little actress. Your every move represents Hai Rue's image. S.J. has yet to be finalized and the agency's contract clearly states that you shouldn't go against the agency because of me. I have my own ways to deal with S.J.'s matter. Xinglan tried to convince Long Jie into the middle of the night, but Long Jie still did not agree. Luckily, Xinglan did not agree. Otherwise, Long Jie would have regretted dragging Xinglan down with her when things actually happened. Xinglan, if you're not willing to ask for help, are you not going to look for a husband like me? Lu Che asked as he stood up. I know you want to prove yourself, but you shouldn't draw such a clear line between us. After hearing Lu Che's words, Long Jie shook her head and denied. Trust me, Lu Che, it's not that I don't want to ask for your help. It's just that I still don't understand this group well enough. You know what Han Xiuqiu is like, right? Lin Qian and Hong Jie both warned me to be careful of him. So, in order not to implicate too many people, I need to be careful. This is the reason why I rejected Xinglan. Did you think I didn't want to make these four famous? I dream about it. After hearing this, Lu Che took a deep breath and nodded his head. You're sensible and mature. That's because I often stand in Tongning's shoes and think about what she would do if she was there. Okay, let me know after you've confirmed it. If you can't hold on any longer, let me know too. Lu Che took the opportunity to pull Long Jie into his embrace. Although I'm not as capable as the president, I still have the ability to protect my woman. Do you understand? Ha! Long Jie closed her eyes and tried her best to feel Lu Che's aura. Marrying this man was the best decision she had ever made in her life. As Han Xiucha watched Long Jie dedicate herself to Sabe, he couldn't help but reveal a meaningful smile. Meanwhile, Sabe was currently on the verge of debuting. This was proof that Long Jie had her own methods. Unfortunately, her relationship with Tongning had been ruined. Long Jie, my relationship with Lin Weisin isn't bad. Why don't I contact him and see if I can get some fashion resources for Sabe? Faced with Han Xiucha's passionate offer of help, Long Jie shook her head. Don't owe others favors for nothing. Even if you get some resources now, it won't help the group. You need to understand, once they become famous, resources will automatically come to them. That's true, right now they just need an opportunity to perform. Does that mean when that time comes, Sabe will announce their debut? Long Jie nodded her head. The effects of the video were currently showing and the promotion was continuously expanding. I will try my best to create a positive image for them and release some press releases. If you need my help with anything, just let me know. Han Xiucha smiled and nodded. Introducing them to me is already the biggest help you've given me. I still haven't thanked you. Long Jie thanked Han Xiucha sincerely. Long Jie wanted to see Han Xiucha's sincerity. Chapter 10:18. I just happen to know them. These juniors are truly capable, Han Xiucha replied. So, I should be the one thanking you for being their scout. Long Jie looked straight into Han Xiucha's eyes. However, at this time, her phone rang. It was an old acquaintance. Long Jie, it's all thanks to your help that I'm still able to survive in the industry. I know you've been helping newcomers lately, so I immediately contacted you. The University Music Festival is happening right now, so I can bring your group to the university. The Heavenly Queen, Qin, will be appearing on the university's stage. So, I'll be able to hitch a ride with her. What do you think? At a time like this, those that were willing to lend a helping hand were true friends. Long Jie immediately replied, I will definitely remember your kindness. You're being too serious. I had a feeling that Tongning would return to Beijing. Consider it a backup plan for myself. Long Jie understood how important it was. Since someone had helped her, she naturally remembered them. Don't worry. Okay, in that case, focus on training the newcomers. Han Xiucha listened to the entire conversation between Long Jie and the man. From the looks of it, Sabe's first performance was confirmed. Who would have thought? The opportunity presented itself like this. How fast? He thought, Long Jie should first enjoy the sense of accomplishment that these four people brought her. No, to be exact, she should seize the opportunity to enjoy it. Afterwards, Long Jie relayed the good news to Sabe and told them in detail. During your time at university, you had plenty of opportunities to perform. I've seen your stage presence and I'm sure you'll have no problems. But, you will now be leaving the university and facing the entire entertainment industry. So, you need to be serious. If your first performance fails, it means you're useless. After Long Jie's encouragement, the four people placed a lot of importance on this performance. After all, after this performance, they would officially debut. We understand. We will definitely do our best. The four people replied excitedly. Tongning was in the U.S. After hearing from Mo Ting that Long Jie was helping newcomers debut, she felt relieved. During my years at Tianyi, Long Jie did a lot to pave the way for me. She's actually very capable. With the mention of Tianyi, Mo Ting glanced at Tongning without saying a word. After quite some time he finally said, at the moment, she insists on not letting Lu Che help. She will be fine. Tongning comforted Yan Er as she replied. What about you? When are you planning to return? Are you referring to how arrogant Ma Weiwei is? Tongning asked. I heard about the commotion she caused in Beijing. You don't even care about that Ma Weiwei. What I'm asking is, When will you have the courage to face yourself? Mo Ting took Yen air from her hands and looked straight into her eyes. It was like he was trying to see through her. I heard you made some changes to the post-production of The Ant Queen. While I was in the US, I learned a lot and realized the difference between Eastern sci-fi and Western sci-fi. I don't think I have the ability to take charge at the moment. Ting. Xiao Sen's wish is to create a sci-fi film that is on par with Western sci-fi. But our previous ideas and standards are too basic and immature. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. Just do your best. Plus, the East and the West have always had a huge cultural difference. The West's approach may not be suitable for the East. Tongning looked at Mo Ting and softened her gaze. I won't disappoint you. By the way, you need to tell Lu Che to help Long Jie out more. Tongning had high expectations for herself, so she also raised her expectations for The Ant Queen. During post-production, she requested for the production team to be more detailed and complex. But no matter how big of a difference there was, Tongning insisted on maintaining the original story. Even if it was filmed by two different directors, she wouldn't let Xiao Sen's efforts go to waste. As a result, The Ant Queen would be released to the public a little later than usual. A few days later, the university music ceremony was held at one of the top universities in the country. Because of the arrival of the Heavenly Queen, the ceremony attracted a lot of people. Not only were the students of the university present, but members of the public were also present. The stadium, which could hold 5,000 people, was packed to the brim. The Heavenly Queen only had 2 songs to perform and she didn't care about anything else. After her performance, she was to leave immediately. So, even if there were newcomers trying to gain popularity, she didn't care. To maintain the focus of the fans, Long Jie's new band was placed in front of the Heavenly Queen. This was to maximize the number of people watching the concert. Long Jie was already satisfied with this arrangement. After Xia Hanmo's unexpected death and Tongning's departure, Superstar Media couldn't withstand a single blow. It wasn't easy for them to get back on their feet. Don't forget, when Superstar Media was at its peak, how many Heavenly Kings wanted to join it? Did they want to become Tongning's artist? But what about now? After a week of intensive training, S.Abe Jabe was fully prepared. However, the 4 of them were still a little nervous when they heard the waves of noise coming from outside. After all, this wasn't a graduation ceremony for a few hundred people. It was a music ceremony for a few thousand people. Don't be nervous. I previously pressured you guys so that you wouldn't waste your time. But it's too late for regrets now. So, relax and go all out. As long as you're able to face the consequences, I won't blame you, Long Jie comforted. Of course, I also hope to receive a lot of invitations tomorrow. The girls adjusted their breathing and felt a lot less stressed. Go. It's your turn soon. Long Jie placed all her hopes on the girls. She assumed that the result wouldn't be too bad. But they still had Han Xiucha to back them up. He had led Long Jie step by step into this trap. So, when it was time to reel in the net, was up to him. Obviously, he didn't intend to push Long Jie beyond redemption. At least, he wanted her to taste the fruits of victory. Otherwise, wouldn't that be too cruel? Faced with such a big stage, Long Jie simply stood backstage. Even though S.Abe Jabe was a newcomer, they were young and fashionable, had outstanding looks, and had dashing and difficult dance moves. So, amidst the flashing lights, the few of them created a small climax. Even though the people watching didn't know who they knew they were cool and had a lot of flavor. As long as they caught the attention of others, Long Jie's goal for the night would be half complete. These few people really have some talent, but Long Jie soon changed her mind. Chapter 10-19. After leaving the music ceremony, the 4 people were breathing heavily. But from their excited expressions, it was obvious that tonight would be the start of S.Abe J's rise to stardom began. At the same time, Long Jie was well aware of how saturated the singing industry was. Due to all sorts of talent shows and singers of all levels, it was too much for the eyes to take in. If you didn't have anything special, it would be extremely difficult to rely on singing to reach the next level. So, Long Jie hired a choreographer from South Korea to make up for the lack of dancers in the country. As a result, after the music ceremony, Long Jie opened up all sorts of resources and finally let out a sigh of relief. After that, the training for the few of them became even stricter. When Tongning was still around, Superstar Media was a professional agency that rescued outdated artists. But now that Tongning was gone, Long Jie decided to turn Superstar Media into a cradle for newcomers and a training ground for various groups. Young and fashionable would become synonymous with Superstar Media. Seeing the results of Long Jie's training, Han Xiuqi's manager couldn't help but sigh. The people at Superstar Media weren't just for show. Although Long Jie didn't have as many methods as Tongning, she still had her strengths. She knew that Han Xiuqi was the one who introduced these people to Superstar Media, so she was naturally happy to see them rise. Actually, apart from drawing comics, you could also be a talent scout. Han Xiuqi sneered as he stood in front of his drawing board. I didn't introduce these people to Superstar Media because I wanted them to become famous. Did you think I'd be so kind? Can't you treat it as a good thing? The manager turned and glared at Han Xiuqi. No way. To put it bluntly, Han Xiuqi's manager knew what was bothering him. On the surface, he said that he hated Tongning, but in reality, he just wanted to expose Tongning and see her reaction. He thought she was interesting, but he was stubborn and hadn't learned how to communicate properly. Even if Tongning provoked you, she's just unlucky. But what about Long Jie? If Long Jie trusts you so much, why do you want to hurt her? Do you know why psychopathic murderers kill people? Han Xiuqi asked as he put down his pen and looked at Long Jie with interest. Why? Because I like her. Long Jie isn't important to me. Why should I care about her feelings? In this world, some people simply did not need logic or reason to do certain things. Some people, deep in their hearts, did not differentiate between good and evil. They would only do what they felt comfortable doing. The manager was completely speechless. She turned around angrily and said, I don't care anymore. Do whatever you want. At this moment, Han Xiuqi was quite pleased with himself because no one could do anything to him. He could do whatever he wanted. What was the entertainment industry? Wasn't it for eating, drinking, and having fun? This was how Han Xiuqi understood the industry. He wanted to see Tongning's reaction? Wasn't Tongning a two-faced woman? What was there for him to be obsessed with? Everything he did was to make Tongning look like she was in pain. Meanwhile, in the US, Jones's The Resurrected Specimen would soon enter its final phase. It would only take a short 2 to 3 months because the rest of the film was still in post-production. This was all thanks to the strength of Hollywood's special effects team. This wasn't something that Tongning could learn even if she wanted to. In post-production, Jones seemed to be afraid that Tongning wouldn't understand, so he explained things in detail. This was exactly what Tongning had expected. Her previous lessons in the UK were a waste of time. No matter how many films she watched or how much theory she memorized, it wouldn't be as effective as Jones's experience. We haven't known each other for a long time, but the things I can teach you are very practical. Tongning, filming is an art. The hardest part is to develop your own style. This may take you a lifetime to study. From now on, you can only rely on yourself. I know you're also producing a film. I've seen your design drafts with the previous director. I can't wait to see your results. Jones did not comment on Tongning's film because he knew about Chao Sen's situation. Tongning had learned so much, yet she did not change the main storyline. This meant she wanted to preserve as much of the efforts of her old friends as possible. This was also the reason why Jones was willing to teach Tongning. She was a loyal person. I'm also aware that your husband personally participated in this film, and I have every reason to believe that a film that's the culmination of so many people's efforts won't be too bad. You need to believe in yourself. Tongning sighed. After all, as the father of sci-fi, Jones had already done everything he could and taught her everything he could. Although it hadn't been long, this was fate. Of course, Tongning couldn't take it for granted that this was a school and Jones was like a teacher, teaching her systematically. On the day of the film's completion, Jones was drunk because he was going to announce his retirement after this film was finished. But Tongning couldn't bear to part with this great old man. I hope I can visit you again in the future. You are my only disciple, so you do have this special privilege. I welcome you at any time. Jones smiled. Tongning as my disciple, don't disappoint me. I won't. Tongning nodded. I believe in you. That night, Tongning and Jones chatted for a long time. The teacher and disciple were like father and daughter. Jones gave Tongning a lot of advice. Before we part, I will give you a present. I hope you will like it. These were the last words Jones said to Tongning as she drove him home. At the time, Tongning had no idea what Jones meant. It wasn't until a few days later, when many American film and television companies contacted her, that she found out that Jones had recommended her to a number of big names in the industry. To keep Jones' disciple, the biggest film and television company in the US even offered Tongning a very attractive offer. But Tongning rejected them. She knew where her true stage was. Plus, she knew that she didn't have the right to do so. They were simply doing this out of respect for her mentor. Is it time to consider returning to China? Late at night in the US, Ting asked as he held onto Tongning's hand. You should eventually return to the place that belongs to you. Tongning smiled and shook her head. There's no rush. We will continue to study our techniques in the US until I'm satisfied with the post-production of The Ant Queen. I promised that I would return with a finished product, but I'm only halfway done. Fine, my great director Tang, you are quite a hot topic in the US right now. Are you laughing at me? Tongning leaned into Ting's embrace. I'm complimenting you. Ting laughed. Let's go, Yan Er should be waking up soon. By the way, how's our son? What do you think? Zishi is doing well. But Zichen. Ting didn't need to explain himself, but Tongning already understood. Didn't you say you were going to take Zichen to do a test? Tongning asked. If the child turns out to be a genius, wouldn't we be in luck? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.